Ah, the green, green grass of home. That's a wonderful scene, isn't it? Yeah, it is. And replicated many, many times across East Sussex, I may say. For that matter, thousands and millions of times across the world. You just have to go looking for them a little bit. That's all. Yes, I needed coffee this morning, even though let's go to that thing that you desperately want first thing in the morning is what's the weather going to be? Oh, it's going to be gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. Today, the sun is going to shine all day. It's going to reach a heady 21 degrees. Let's see, that's 40, 42, 50, 60. That's about 72. Oh, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. And only a gentle breeze. The best of the sunshine at 1 o'clock. 1 o'clock today. We get some brilliant heat, brilliant sun, and very little wind, and absolutely no rain. None whatsoever. So that's rather good, isn't it? There we go. That's not a bad start to this day. Mind you, it can only get worse. I should really. That makes me sound like a Job's comforter as you get out of bed. Mind you, there's not much comfort in the news. So what we could do is we could go and take a look at the news. We cross over to our news studio. Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. How posh can we get? I think we'll just leave it at that and be glad that has worked this way, because nothing else did. As you know, we're always having trauma, but this morning, for some reason, the plugs weren't working, and we had no electricity into the system, and so the system failed. I was beginning to panic. I thought, oh no, God really is against me. But eventually, with a little kick and a little shake, I made it work. I did. Yes, I think I need to adjust this camera slightly. Forgive me. Yes, that's better. That is better. Let's go to the news before I get into any more trouble. So, that's not the news. This is the news. And it's not good news. The Mirror kicks off this morning. Whooping cough warning. And the Mirror is one of several papers this morning to report that 5 babies have died of whooping cough. The paper says the country is facing its worst outbreak in 40 years. Gosh, yes, I remember whooping cough when I was a kid. I never caught it myself, but it was pretty rife throughout the country. The Metro. Look who's back in time. A jabs plea over whooping menace. 5 babies die as cough bug spikes. So, it's also known as the 100-day cough. I know that it hits children very badly. Does whooping cough hit adults? Either? Does whooping cough hit adults as well as...
I'm not sure. I had it as a teenager, but I had jabs for it. I'm sure I did. But my boy had it, but he had the jabs. But I think they're saying with this lot now, during COVID, the parents weren't going and getting their baby vaccinated. So
Right.
of course they haven't been vaccinated for the
So now
whooping
that's now that sounds like a reasonable. You see, don't go to the medics.
cough.
Go to Ada to find out what the hell's happening. Yeah, and why it's happening.
Yeah, it's not a nice thing to get though, is it?
No,
I had
it's
that
not.
as a teenager.
Yeah. The Daily Mail. Worst whooping cough outbreak in 40 years. 5 babies dead as experts blame the fall in the vaccination rates. You're quite right. The Mail says that almost 3,000 cases have been reported so far this year. The paper also carries a picture of Stormy Daniels, who's at the center of a case in the United States in which former President Donald Trump has pleaded not guilty to criminal charges of falsifying business records in relation to a hush money payment made in the adult film to the adult film star. Oh yeah, she's a porn star. Well, the picture is pretty damn good looking. The Guardian, fear and trepidation as 100,000 people flee Rafah bombardment. That says the Guardian leads on Israel's Rafah offensive in Gaza, reporting that 100,000 have fled, while Israel Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vows his country will fight with their fingernails in defiance of U.S. warnings not to proceed with a ground invasion in Rafah. Oh, that's hotting up. That's hotting up. Pretty tough cookie, this Netanyahu. He's impervious to insults or advice or anything else. He does what he thinks is right. The Eye. Cummings. Boris and I saved thousands from COVID, but we won't talk again. This was Boris's advisor. Dominic Cummings, during COVID. The two fell out. He says that they won't, they'll never be pals again, really, after the war of words and blame shift. But the former chief advisor to Boris Johnson claims to have saved thousands of lives during COVID, but says it's extremely, extremely unlikely him and Mr. Johnson will ever speak again. Wow, that's a pretty bitter falling out then. I've only ever had one person like that in my life. Daily Express. Who'll win the tug of war over interest rates? Well, Express leads with Chancellor Jeremy Hunt urging the Bank of England not to cut interest rates. Funny, he was going the other way a little while ago. Until it's absolutely sure that high inflation is beaten. Well, they claim to have beaten it in the States and then it resurged. So I guess he's right to be wise, although it's not really a popular decision. Oh dear. I managed to hit the wrong button again as usual. There we are. The Daily Telegraph. Same story. Hunt urges bank not to rush rate cuts. He obviously knows what the rest of us don't know. If they do that, then we're going to be dumped into the mire again. The Daily Telegraph also leads on the Chancellor warning the Bank of England about cutting interest rates too quickly. This is alongside a story about Labour Deputy Leader Angela Rayner assuring MPs that Natalie Elphicke, who defected from the Tories to Labour, will have no formal role in the party. In other words, they're going to pick up reins. I don't know that she's got many brains left. Hardly a great career move. The Times. Truancy up by a fifth on Fridays. The Times leads with a story on the Education Secretary saying that there has been an unacceptable rise in school truancy on Fridays. Well, I'll be damned. Financial Times. Anglo's investors in South Africa open to sweetened takeover offer from BHP. The FT reports that mining firm Anglo-American South African shareholders are open to a takeover from BHP. FT back to big business stories. It'll affect all of us, but it's very difficult to make business stories sexy sometimes. To our lips, yes, it will. Exciting news from the space eggheads at NASA. We want to see big pictures of Uranus. And they're banking on everybody. We'll be pronouncing it that way, not Uranus. I think I'd choose the latter. It doesn't escape the star. They oh dear.
You want a paper, Kate?
Yes, please. Let's see if there's anything. Thank you. See if there's anything else. No, it covers all the headlines that we've seen, but let's just take a look. Lewis Council is in special measures. Primarily because the planning committee is decision making. The Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities made the announcement. It means developers will now be able to submit major applications directly to the planning inspectors, circumventing the local decision making process. Oh dear. Huh. Well, that's another. Zoe Nicholson rabbiting on. Maria Caulfield says the lack of a local plan means housing development across Seaford, New Haven and Lewis is being dictated by developers and not building the housing we need locally. Oh dear, this is bound to break out at some stage. We're in for a real battle now. And mudslinging. Well, we love mudslinging here because it gives us something to sling. But being placed into special measures is what it indicates is that the federal government does not think the district is being efficient. It needs some adjusting from outside, and that's no surprise. We've cheated on that for a dozen years, I think. Now it's finally happened. Lewis in special measures. One time, one of the finest and best administered governance units anywhere in southern England. That's the way the cookie crumbles. That's what we asked for. That's what we got. You can't have your cake and eat it, chaps. No, indeed you can't. So that's the way that we look at 20 past 8 rather. I was hoping this morning that we were going to have Rosie Hayes on, but she has not appeared so far, and it has been a bit of a muck-up because of the bank holiday in the week. Schedules get twisted, so and nobody quite sure where they should twist. So nobody knows who's supposed to work when. Never mind, we'll have it sorted out this time next week. Put our new Chief Operating Officer, Paul Cheeseman, to work. Get him to draw up a decent schedule, at least a grid. She's lovely out there, there's no question. Very, very nice. I wish I could show you, but I can't. Unless I point to the sky, there's no point in that. Only to prove that there are no clouds there. Bit of a waste. Of a camera. Much better than you see me acknowledging that camera from time to time. Okay, now we have a fairly busy day, and I had hoped to have Rosie's in chat too. She's a fantastic journalist. To help keep an eye on you. There we are.
Can I swap over? Okay. Can I swap these over? Or is it gonna mess it up?
You better let me take it off first.
Oh no, it's all right. Leave it like that then. It's okay.
Okay, yeah. Otherwise,
no, it's fine.
You'd have my head on the ceiling.
No, I was going to put it back on a different one.
Yeah, it's it records everything.
Okay,
all movements. Yeah.
No worries.
Okay. Thanks, I don't very often say no to you.
No, I know.
Now, she brought her grandson in this morning, who is not feeling at all well. Let's hope he hasn't got whoopers off. What have you set him to do, Ida?
Sorry?
What have you set Cody to do?
He has to put the candles and the menus on the table.
Oh, right.
Dusting if
Oh, he's not getting away scot-free then this morning. No.
He wants his pocket money, Keith. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. There we are. That's the way we do things around here. That's why I've got no pocket money.
The value of money, really.
What?
I don't want him thinking money's no object.
No.
He's got to know the value of it.
Join the club,
But
Cody.
then he's quite good. He won't spend his own money. He makes sure his own money stays at home.
All right. Good for him. Yes. Good for him. Right. Okay. Let me just remind you about the weather again, because you're always worried about that. It's 21 degrees, or going to be 21 degrees today, with only a gentle breeze. And actually, the hanging baskets aren't moving at all. So that's how gentle it is. And tomorrow it's going to be as brilliant. So we got a good one. I thought I heard somebody. Isn't it funny? All this technology, and we can barely send the weather to each other. Oh well. Okay. So the pub being busy, ready for a day. It's going to be a hot day, so I expect we'll have a lot of people in from dying from thirst. And it'll be very busy. Now, I don't know what we got on the video. No, you just have to. You have to put up with me.
A fresh one.
Love one, thank you. Ruminating a bit. Let's look at the inside of the Times. Now, Dominic Cummings, apparently, according to the Times, is going to form yet another new party to replace what he calls the Tory horror show. Oh, we'll have to see what Harry thinks about that. Yeah. Well, it's well, there's not much on the inside of It is a very mixed bag. A very mixed bag. Oh, the chief of staff has arrived.
Struggling a bit. I don't want to leave it for that, so I can do some. I don't want to leave. I don't want to leave, but I am struggling to have chairs. So yeah, there's no rush. I don't mind doing a month's notice or something like that.
Let's see. Oh, I'm listening to them having a conversation, and I shouldn't be. I should be concentrating on you. But this good weather makes you feel very laid back. You don't really want to get terribly excited and take anybody on anything, do you? Do you feel that way? Lethargic. And it's going to get worse as the morning goes by, I'm sure. Because it's a feisty morning. A very feisty morning.
Oh, my lovely. Okay.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you.
Do you want me to move the paper? Have you finished with that?
But Lewis Council placed in special measures. They will not like that. They a very hold power to themselves type of council. They don't like sharing it with anybody. Yeah. It's wonderful to hear the noises and to view the scenes of the morning, at this hour of the morning. It really is. I hope that you're enjoying them wherever you are. Okay. Lewis Council placed in special measures. That means that some of the decision taking about how the district is run, which is why they're elected, is taken out of their hands and put into I'm not quite sure who put into. I guess in this particular case, since the issue is financial, it's put into finance. And they're the people that will call the shots. But essentially, the issue seems to be that they, over planning issues. The government thinks that our local government, district council, is not doing the proper job. It's not looking at the issues properly. Therefore, it removes its authority to deal in certain aspects of the administration. That is a bit of a problem for the elected council. It's like being asked to govern with a hand tied behind your back. So even though I'm gloating that we told you it would happen, I'm also terribly sorry because you're not making yourself clear to us. And we don't want to be in special administration, they say. But you found yourself there. That's why you sit today.
Want dinner? Sorry about that. Want to get coffee?
Well, I'm going to invite Harry a little earlier than we normally do. Perhaps he'll pick up. I am feeling lethargic, I must say. It's there we go. So I should be wrong.
If you're scared of spiders, right? Okay, if you're scared of spiders, how come you like snakes?
He'd be a bit shocked to get this. He'd probably panic and drop his eggs. But the invitation is gone.
10. Mental, isn't it? I'm dizzy when I first started. I don't know, it must be about, I think about 3 maybe. Something like that. Mental.
Okay, now I've got to get out of this torpor, this early morning torpor. I felt fine when I
But yeah, I hope I'm not leaving you in the lurch,
in.
though. I can stay until you've got someone. Yeah.
Oh, you can see. No, you can see Ada getting the cobwebs off. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You see how well we're looked after here, and you get all the action first thing in the morning.
I know you've even got the boss man in as well.
Yes, I know.
Very lucky.
See him at this hour. No, it's not that unusual, actually. Very hard-working bloke. Aren't we all? We play. Well, I guess I could play. This week has been episode 7 of The Bloody Past. Let's bring you up to date by replaying it as we go up to the hour. It repeats a staple part of television today. Mirador is no different, although we try to be as fresh as we can. But here's the bloody past of Tiny Town. The penultimate decision episode, and a way of telling you about the town.
the centre of Lewes is a war memorial, a monument to the dead of 2 world wars. It's the centre of the huge bonfire celebrations in Lewes on November the 5th. And of course, Remembrance Day services at various times of the year. But it also sits in the middle of an old square, which was surrounded by inns and hotels, the centre of social life in the town over almost 6 centuries. The White Hart we already talked about, but the Crown and the Star both have fascinating histories. The Star Inn was a luxurious hotel used by royalty and gentry from the 14th century, when it was an inn owned by the Southover Priory. Parts of it are still there, disguised now as Lewes Town Hall. The inn was originally used to shelter pilgrims travelling to either Canterbury or Chichester, but it soon outgrew its clientele, and especially after the priory was torn down. In the 16th century, it started to get a reputation for its fine cuisine. By the mid-1600s, bishops and poets were praising it for its food and wine. There was, of course, the Black Spot in the time of Queen Anne, when the cellars were used as dungeons to hold some of the martyrs as prisoners, as they waited to be burned at the stake. By the mid-1700s, it was the scene of social gaiety. A monthly supper and ball were held each month throughout the winter, and the Prince Regent used it to hold dinner parties after attending the Lewes races. It is also said the Prince used it for other purposes, meeting young ladies there incognito, presumably for affairs of the heart. In the late 1800s, its clientele had changed, and it was the farm owners who held sway. Their weekly market luncheons were used for heavy social activity until eventually the premises were bought by Lewes Council. They turned it into a town hall late in the 19th century, and this it still is. But the changes have been considerable, and the present town hall is barely recognised from the outside as the great inn which housed the social elite of Lewes. But the town hall is still a centre of social life, used for parties and dinner dances, and important civic events, such as the exhibition featuring the Rodin statue, The Kiss. Once banned from Lewes, but welcomed back with open arms for a brief stay. The Crown Hotel is almost next door and is still extant. Although it has struggled recently to achieve former glories, it was built in the reign of Charles I and was originally called the Black Lion. It changed its name to the Crown in 1790, and the Crown it has remained until this day. In its better years, it received visits from royalty, King George IV, and there is no suggestion that he was with a young lady. There's a little bit of modern history, though, to add to the Crown. When I first came to Lewes, there was a chap called Tony Burton here who befriended me. Tony took out the tenancy of the Crown Inn after a life of travelling around the world. He installed a grand piano in the bar area and played it to laughter and gaiety throughout the 80s, and he attracted a whole range of entertainers to join him. Those glory days have gone. Ownership of the Star Inn and of many properties around Lewes showed the power and the wealth of the Priory. When Henry VIII had the Priory pulled down, his hatchet man, Thomas Cromwell, grabbed a mansion house nearby, which had been owned by the Priory. But he didn't own it until his power had started to slip. Anne of Cleves led to the downfall of Thomas Cromwell from almost unprecedented heights of power. He was the king's favourite, and why not? He'd masterminded Henry's break with Rome. But he also masterminded his marriage to Anne. She turned out to be anything other than a beauty, and Henry never forgave his friend for arranging the marriage. The king had the marriage annulled after 6 months, on the grounds it had not been consummated. Anne's looks are historically the reason given for why the king couldn't make love to her. Cromwell took the blame, and as he slipped from power, his enemies closed in. He was eventually imprisoned in the Tower and beheaded. He added, in a distant sort of way, to the bloody Lewes tag. The executioner took 3 shots at trying to behead him. Anne of Cleves was granted this 15th century house bearing her name in Lewes when her marriage to Henry VIII was annulled in 1541. It was on the 16th of February 1538 that Lewes Priory was given to Thomas Cromwell, who was then Keeper of the Privy Seal. He immediately set about converting part of the prior's lodgings as a home for his son Gregory.
At the dissolution of the monasteries, Thomas Cromwell, who was Henry's chief advisor, had his beady eye on the land of Lewes Priory, as it was one of the richest and largest priories in the country. Now, he also wanted to set up a household in this area, and in fact his son Gregory lived in the what was latterly known as the Lord's Place across the road. It was the old prior's lodgings. But he certainly became Lord of the Manor of Southover when he got all the Lewes Priory lands off of the Priory. Well, the Priory was closed down and demolished, and they did a pretty good job of that by banging posts underneath the foundations and setting fire to them to bring that down. So, as I say, Cromwell's had this as part of his portfolio of properties. So he sent Holbein out to the famous picture, which we've got a copy out in the hall there, to do paintings of possible, which included Christine of Denmark, but also Anne of Cleves and her sister. Henry liked the picture, so said, right, okay, we'll go ahead with it. You know, I suppose it was a bit of a like online dating in Tudor times. The painting was supposed to be a fairly good likeness of her. She has got fairly heavy eyelids. She tended to wear the heavy German style of clothes, which wasn't the sort of flighty sort of stuff, French stuff that Anne Boleyn and the likes would have worn. She was very pragmatic, in as much as she agreed to the annulment of the wedding, and because of that, and you know, I don't know, it's been a bit of a long, circuitous way of getting around to it. To answer your question, the house here became part of the annulment settlement.
Right.
The Manor of Southover was one of 9 manors that she got in Sussex. She also, and by manor, we're not just talking about this house and the gardens around it. It's all the land that was providing for. So this was one of 9 manors in Sussex. She had another 9 in Essex. She was welcome at court. She got on well with Henry and Mary and Elizabeth, his 2 daughters as well. She actually outlived all the other wives, and she's the only one buried in Westminster Abbey. At Anne's death, it reverted to the crown, and it went through a number of hands. Most notably was the Saxby family, who did a lot of the alterations to the house. So the original house would have been the footprint that you see from the road. So in fact, the bit that we've got now is the Iron Gallery and the Lewis Room was an old malt house. And eventually, Frank Verrill, who owned it, was on the council and was involved heavily with the Sussex Archaeological Society, presented it to the Society in 1925, and it's been a museum ever since then.
Not much later, in 1603, one of the oldest monuments to Lewis life began existence. A local lawyer, John Rowe, gifted a piece of land to the town. It was much later that the town worthies decided to put it to use. They created Pell's Pool, a public swimming bath, drawing the water from the spring under the land. The water still comes from that source to this day. The cost of the project in the mid-1800s was £442, 5 shillings and 6pence, raised by public subscription. The name Pell's comes from an ancient word meaning pools. Again, it was the priory that influenced this development. There was a series of pools nearby before even the Romans came to Britain. The Normans transformed these pools into fish ponds, and the priory monks used them to rear swans, providing feathers for their quilts. They later drained the area to create water meadows, which included a paper mill. Locals would swim in the mill pond, and so a tradition of swimming was established in the area, resulting in the present-day swimming pool, the oldest freshwater swimming pool in Britain. But water has not always been a friend to Lewes. Whenever I have talked about attacks on Lewes, it has been either fire, wars, or plague. But there was one enemy which had formerly been a friend throughout its history: water. Back in a moment, but for once not a visit to the pub, but a reflection on the power of water. Lewes has always been subject to flooding, but the worst attack was in modern times, in fact, in the year 2000. The flooding was as serious as it was unexpected. 3 days of exceptionally heavy rain caused the River Ouse to spill over the top of its flood defences. Southover, the area near to the Priory, flooded first. But the worst of the deluge swept into the town centre at about 9 o'clock that night. I don't normally like to give what I call a shopping list of facts and figures, but the devastation was as severe as when the French raided the town in the 16th century. Almost 900 properties were flooded, over 500 vehicles were wrecked, and the total cost came to £90 million. More than 1,000 people were displaced. The town was cut in half for 3 days. But the true spirit of Louisians was put on show that night. Homes were opened to the displaced. Elbow grease took over, and the task of repairing the town began almost immediately. The long-term effects were felt for months, even years afterwards. Another bloody chapter in the history of the town. Lewes is a town of little theatre, opera companies, bands and musical societies. The people get on with entertaining themselves. So when cinema disappeared from the High Street in 1961, it was barely noticed. Nostalgia, yes, but mourning, no. The townsfolk got cracking, and films were shown in a local abandoned church and the little theatre premises. A local radio station gave limited broadcasts for the week of Bonfire, and another week for a now-defunct Lewes Festival in 1997. Radio K-Burn evolved into Rocket Radio, a broadcaster still going strong, when the Bonfire marches begin in November. Then, as if by magic, with the development of blockbuster movies and multi-screen cinemas, the last picture show became the first. A new 3-screen cinema opens its doors. But as you've heard me say several times in this series, this is Lewes, and nothing is ever what it seems. Guess where the cinema is located? No, not quite in one of the 63 pubs, but you're close. In an old storage warehouse owned by Harvey's Brewery. It could only happen in Lewes. Ta-ran-ta-ra! Quite wonderful, quite appropriate. Lewes is full of nostalgia, and previously I have told you about the importance of horse racing to Lewes. But equally, it is a railway town, and the railway has had a profound effect on the history of Lewes. The advent of the railway caused one death and one rebirth of important elements of Lewes the town. When it first came in 1844, the Brighton, Lewes and Hastings Railway gave a new means of trading to Lewes. The port had seen a huge amount of activity as the foundations of the new railway lines demanded clay. The barge owners were only too happy to oblige, and their vessels sailed back and forth up the Ouse, bringing load after load. But there is no sentiment in business, as they say. And the railway quickly took over the haulage business once enjoyed by the ships sailing on the Ouse. Slowly, shipping declined, and so did the port. Lewes became an increasingly important railway hub, serving the coastal towns of Sussex as well as London and the nearby town of Uckfield. That line no longer exists, but as with all things lost in Lewes, there are serious attempts to get it reopened. While it caused the decline of the port, it was the saviour of the racecourse. Crowds had rapidly declined after royalty had ceased to favour the track, and transport proved difficult. But the trains gave easy access to Lewes, and the course flourished again. The recording of those races is almost as old as I am. I can remember as a little boy standing on the platform scribbling down numbers as trains belching fire and smoke roared by. Well, those days have gone, but the importance of the routes emanating from Lewes have not. They are key transport systems linking the ports, major towns and the capital city with a ribbon of rail track, reaching out across the country, carrying people and goods. But the original network was much more ambitious than this. Trains have always been important to Lewes. And so, let me use the phrase again, this is Lewes and nostalgia reigns. Around the country, steam enthusiasts have saved miles of track and hundreds of steam engines for posterity. Lewes has done its bit by keeping the Bluebell Railway. The Bluebell, or to give it its proper name, the Lewes and East Grinstead Railway, ran between the two towns from 1877. It had 5 stations, but all of them were rural. The reason was that the railway was built to run near its benefactor, Lord Sheffield's estate, almost entirely for his own convenience. It recorded that the entire touring Australian cricket team on one occasion was taken to his lordship's residence to play against the Sussex team. Now it's a showpiece of steam trains and puffer engines, clanking along its original route, carrying passengers and goods through wonderful scenery, from Lewes to the old coaching stop of East Grinstead. Nostalgia.
Time to say ta-ta again, but tonight not to a pub, but in a cloud of steam. Well, there we are. I look back. That racing scene, incidentally, for people who are new to the town, it's difficult for them to understand how important the racecourse was. From 1720 some odd, some say prior to that there was a racecourse here during Queen Anne's time. And that goes back to, the very, very late 1600s. The course, though, prior to 1966, I think it's 1966 when it was shut down, is on race days, several things happened. The Prince Regent, as he was then, later, King William IV, he would frequently attend. And as of today, people rubbernecked royalty. And records suggest that from a small town, which in those days was probably half as much gain as we are now, were ready to, the Prince Regent, start again. The Prince Regent would turn up at races, and that would attract, as some say, up to 10 or 15,000 people who all wanted to just see what the Prince Regent looked like. Here was an opportunity. So, need to direct, keep the pictures and so on going, as well as take part. Not always the easiest situation. Anyway, I think, I hope that we got Harry lurking in the background somewhere. But the racecourse it was a famous racecourse. It has provided training stables here. We provided local winners, of course, but also a couple of Derby winners over the years, and one of whom is buried next with his horse up in the race course itself, buried and just out of sentiment, yeah, I suppose. Now, we have a good morning from Gary Toynton. Good morning, Gary. As you can see, we're a little lethargic this morning, and I think I'm ascribing it to the very decent weather. And I hope it's sunny where you are. I'm certainly finding it very difficult to dig my spurs into the flanks of the horses and let them go full tilt. Well, Gary is asking how I am, and I have had a poor spell in the beginning of the week, Gary, but I'm beginning to perk up a little bit. But it is difficult when the sun is shining. I'm locked indoors, mind you. I love being locked indoors at the Black Horse, and not able to get out into it and lie and take in the nice hot rays of the sun. I'm stuck here. I've got to work. It's very, very unfortunate. But there we are. Some of us have to work, as you well know. Yeah, a few minutes past 10. And what I thought was going to be a very, very busy Friday is turning out to be not at all busy. Well, Gary Taunton agrees with me. Somebody's got to work. And it's me labouring a little today. I think I might just resend. Enjoy your coffee, Keith, he says, and a nice hat. Well, actually, Gary, I get a lot of good comments on this hat. It's the only good thing I get a comment on. Oh, dear. But yes, I am enjoying my coffee. And thank you for making the comment. And thank you for asking about the state of my health. But I think I will send another invitation. It's always difficult to know whether messages are getting through. Invitations to. Rocket Mail, haven't come across that one. I wonder what it's like looking at a television screen and seeing somebody who's as lethargic as I am this morning. I find it difficult to get excited, I suppose, when there isn't that much awkward news around on the national scene. And it's a mixed bag this morning. we had quite quite an interesting week earlier in the week, and a very good chat. Earlier, and I am floundering a bit this morning, aren't I? Normally, I am got the gift of the gab. I press button A, and away I go talking, and you can't shut me up. But this week, is it because we had a holiday on Monday? I don't know. People do find it hard to get back to work after a holiday. The statistics that are being brought out by the government statistics, show that we are not very good at getting back to work after we've had a couple of days off. At one time, I would have said, "Oh, poo, poo, poo," but I'm not going to say that this time, because I'm feeling that sort of feeling, if you like, is why should we have horrible things disturb the reverie of a nice day, the sun streaming in through the windows, people wandering through the streets in sleeveless shirts, yes, it is all very pleasant, and I think that I'm getting swept up with the whole idea that there is a weekend coming up in which I can recoup my spirits, my energy is. I hope I'm getting some sympathy here. Oh, Gary Taunton says I'm working too hard. Well, I don't know. You know, if I can be self-indulgent for a moment, is when you're getting on a bit and you're not that well, you know, working too hard becomes relative. But at Mirador, we are all reasonably aged. John Henty, who was in with me yesterday, is 88, and very proud of it. We are all rather proud of that age here, and that we got between us all vast experience, and therefore a vast catalogue of stories to tell, of things that have happened to us over the ages. Yes, we got somebody here. We've got Philip, who I think probably. Good morning, Philip.
Yeah, hello, Keith.
He's probably seen that I've been struggling a little bit because the the two people that are normally quite reliable have not shown this morning, and I think it's because of the bank holiday throws everything out.
Yes, well, I realised, well, I wouldn't say you were struggling, but I realised you were just you. And as I hadn't had any notification yet, I just thought I'd hook up and say hello.
Oh well, I'm glad that you did. It's I wonder is one of the things that struck me in the newspaper headlines this morning was that there is a return of whooping cough.
Yes, there is, and they reckon it's arguably the worst risk of outbreak for 40 years. And it's all because misguided mothers don't vaccinate their kids.
Yes, there is some suggestion, I think, and Ada was very active in chatting to me very early on, is that because of COVID, a lot of mothers thought my kids have had enough vaccinations.
No, it was got the refuseniks for the MMR particularly went on long before COVID. There's a certain sort of section of maternal sisterhood that decide that these vaccinations are more bad than good. And then their kids end up getting measles and mumps and rubella and all sorts of things. But yes, I did read that. There's not much else in the papers this morning, actually.
No, it's not. It is a very slow news day. But one of the interesting things in the local paper is, and it escaped me on Wednesday, is that Lewis has been put in special measures. The local council has been put into special measures.
Well, that's
it's mostly because of its inability to plan properly. But I wonder whether, in fact, the whole environment, because they say that there are hundreds of local councils that are facing bankruptcy. I wonder if it's a government policy of a few years ago of not giving them the money that they wanted or asked for, whether that's catching up with us. Well, what's your view of this special measures?
Well, I wasn't. I mean, is this the same council that you and Stuart have castigated for not publishing accounts?
Yes.
Well, I suspect that lack of account publication for what, 3 or 4 years, is it?
At least 5, yes. And there's one of our correspondents who typed in said that it actually some were missing for longer than that.
Well, that must have contributed to the special measures. Quite who imposes special measures? Is there a local council ombudsman or?
Not that I'm aware. I mean, it's one of those things that I don't totally understand who monitors the special measures. I know there's a government initiative, but is there a ministry for local councils?
I suspect there has to be. There has to be a local government something, hasn't there? I mean, yes. I'll look it up later, but there has to be. Talking of correspondence, I'm seeing a stream of messages from a gentleman called Gary Toynton. Have you seen those?
Yes, I have. Gary's been a long time viewer, and is quite a loyal viewer actually, and is a very nice man.
Well, he
Uh,
thinks you're working too hard,
yes, he does.
but he likes your hat. Everybody likes the hat. It's what's underneath it that's the problem.
I know that's the problem. If only we could improve that a little bit, we'd be on a winner.
You know, we need to tart that up a bit, really. So, just remind me, on a Friday, normally, well, there's Melissa and Mark.
And Harry was coming in at 9 o'clock before
Well,
before
9
I
o'clock.
gave everybody time off last Friday. But then he responded as you did and everybody did to a general call, and we had a marvelous program last Friday.
Well, yes, I remember.
But I think perhaps he thinks that that was I turned it into a one-off.
Well,
but-
no, the plan was that Harry and you, not me, on a Friday would have a more, as he put it, light-hearted conversation.
Yes.
Well, 9 o'clock our time is 10 o'clock his. He normally comes on at 11 o'clock his, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. But on a Friday, Mark maybe joins us at 10 o'clock because he and Melissa are very anxious to talk about a variety of common problems, as it were.
Well, we knew that Mark was away all week, didn't we?
Yes, and he emailed me last night to say he would be available today, and that he would be coming in. But he's everybody is coming up with a lot of initiatives, and I'm chasing down as much as I can. And Mark, of course, is very keen on a project that he's involved with, is to bring a new or the branch of a new university to Lewis.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
is without mentioning the pub chain involved, but there is a big pub chain interested in perhaps getting involved in that. The strange thing is that last evening or yesterday afternoon, I sat with the chief of staff because he likes to have a chat to me from time to time, Declan, and a couple of his pals came in and we had a nice chat. And the fellow said, what do you do? And I said, well, we run a television station from this very pub. And his ears pricked up and he said, oh, I'm a journalist. So we had a chat, and he does the in-house magazine or newsletter for this particular chain of pubs. So we got into a lot of chat, and I let Mark know, and he got quite excited. So I think that there's something lurking in the background, but of course you can't always discover something on a Thursday and be able to put it in on a Friday. You've got some alarms being put in today, is it?
No, I'm having the 2 smart meters replaced. The energy smart meters.
Ah, right.
because the ones we've got are so old, and they were installed by my previous supplier years ago, and now the new suppliers cannot access remotely the meter readings. I can get the electricity meter reading, but I can't get the gas. So, as was made public some months ago now, it is actually the responsibility of the supplier to ensure you have a working smart meter. But it's taken me months to get any joy with them. I'm not going to name them. They don't really answer telephones. It's all email. You never get the same person twice. It's a bit like the National Health Service, actually. Maybe my energy supplier is the NHS in disguise. Yeah. So I'm still waiting. Jackie and I are still waiting for a message that I was told would arrive, because I've been waiting since 8 o'clock. That was the time they said, between 8 and 5 p.m. Well, I've heard nothing. So I don't mind being stuck here, but it means Jackie is sort of stuck here because I can't take her anywhere. Because Fridays, she doesn't work Fridays and Mondays.
Yeah. Well, so, I've got a similar thing with the NHS, and you're right. Is between 8 and 4, and please don't go anywhere between that time. I mean, it's totally unrealistic view of what life is all about.
No,
we are coming, so hang about for us.
Yeah, they make assumptions, particularly with elderly people, that all you do is sit around indoors. Well, that's not what you do.
No, absolutely not.
Heaven forbid. But anyway, I just wait and see if and when these guys turn up. And it's not an easy job. I mean, you know, this is very sophisticated machinery. So we'll see. Maybe on Monday I'll tell you all about it.
Yes.
So you maybe emailed you to say he would be on today.
Sorry?
Did you say to me that Mark emailed you last night?
He, like you, has got a very loving wife, and she, when I said that we wouldn't be broadcasting on Monday, which we didn't, she booked him off at her as a treat from her to take him away for a few days. But I was unclear at that stage how many days. So I've been dropping in little bits of information all week, and said, so let me know when you're back. And last night he let me know and said, I will. I'll see you tomorrow. But his time is 10 o'clock. So
right. So
he may well be along. And I also have. Normally, Melissa says when she won't be. So when I don't hear from her, I always assume that she will be here. It is one of the interesting things is, I mean, we are not amateur because we are all professional, and we turn out a pretty damn good product. But when you're not paid, so you're volunteer, as it were, there isn't the same dynamic in terms of I must turn up for work, because okay, if I don't,
but
fire me.
Nobody likes to be under duress. So if you have volunteers like me, and I can pop in and out just to give you a bit of company through the week, that I do that voluntarily. I don't feel obliged to do that.
No, quite.
I must just say good morning back to Gary, who very kindly messaged me. So good morning, Gary.
All right.
Keith obviously appreciates your viewing loyalty. He seems to be saying, Keith, that he's going to be down next month.
Yes, apparently, I think from conversations in the past, he's got either friends or relatives or somebody in Eastbourne.
Right.
He comes down this way. So if in fact he's coming down, he's more than welcome to come on Mirador.
Oh gosh, yes. And why not?
And why not indeed? I mean, one of the things that people are beginning to understand, I think, who view us, is we see everybody as being interesting. Many years ago, there was an American television program called Dragnet.
I remember it. Yeah.
Remember it? Sergeant Joe Friday. But
Correct.
Do you remember the end tagline?
No.
Well, the end tagline was Sergeant Joe Friday saying, "There are a million stories in the naked city. This is just one of them." So I think that's a very, very good tagline for us.
There are a million stories in the town of Lewis, and this is just one of them.
One of them, yes. But of course, we don't. Our tagline is, "We are local but not parochial."
Yes.
In other words, we are based in Lewis, and obviously we take a look at things in Lewis. And the research shows that, for instance, if you do a gardening program in Lewis about tulips, and it's seen by somebody in Auckland, in New Zealand, which it could easily be, who is interested in the same thing, he'll watch. So I'm always very careful to say we are not just about Lewis and geared to Lewis. We are based in Lewis, and we use a lot of examples in Lewis, but we are global in our approach to stories.
Well, the some of the opening features say Mirador talking to the world and things like that. So
and indeed we are, yeah.
Well, we certainly are when Melissa comes on, that's for sure. Yeah, let's hope Mark hooks up at 10. So, well, hang on, who would normally be on now then?
Harry. Because on a Friday he comes on at 9.
Yeah.
But his schedules are thrown out. The other thing is that I mean, we're not hanging out our dirty linen, because we are very open on Mirador, and I think people are interested to know what makes organisations like ours tick. And we very much we are expanding faster than we can keep up with. I mean, if we were commercial, we would be known as overtrading at the moment. And we're trying very hard to fix it. We've got a lovely man called Paul Cheeseman, who has said he will take a look at he's agreed that he'll look after the admin side of things. But Paul, being Paul and very methodical, is looking at our data on company's house and so on and so forth, so he understands what makes us tick. And that takes a little time. You don't sort of get that sort of data and look at it for 5 minutes. So we are aware of our deficiencies. Like good company executives, we're rushing to fill them. But because we've got fantastic broadcasters in Meredith and Conti and
Here you go again, buttering people up.
well, I only call it as I see it.
I've met Paul Cheeseman remotely because I joined in an admin meeting.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
With him and Mark, and we were all due, weren't we, to hook up?
Yes. The train strike got in the way.
I'm afraid it did.
Yes.
But well, I know. Well, the one thing that Paul does want to sort out. Well, he wants to sort two things out. One, he wants to give your computers a once over. And two, he wants to reduce the number of these accounts you've got. When I'm counting,
yes.
I'm counting 6 Facebook accounts. There's no need for that.
No. The only thing is, I think we need to do it, not just chop them, because, for instance, for some reason, and I mean they're historical, there is an account called Keith Hayes Only for some reason, and that's got 50 or so dedicated viewers.
Yeah, well, that one should stay.
Yeah,
that one and the Mirador television one should stay.
So we need to go through how many viewers each has got. But
yes, well, I'll leave that to you and Paul. I can't interfere with that anyway.
No, I'm not. I'm not. You're actually doing a marvelous job, and I mean, my next project is to teach you just a little bit more about the chefs arriving, about the program side, because I think you make an excellent doing what I'm doing at the moment. But not with quite the same responsibilities, because that would be too time consuming. But you understand programs very well, and you understand people very well, and you understand the broadcasting industry now very well. And not only that, you're one hell of a researcher. I mean, I've only got to say something, and you're on the phone, and before I know it, is you've got a background.
Well, that's the legal background coming in.
Yes, well, it applies very nicely to broadcasting.
It's just natural to me.
Yeah.
And thankfully, I've got Mirador to fill in the gap on retirement. Well, I think Gary's got your disease of buttering people up. His last message is, keep up with the great job, Mirador team.
Well, there you go. No, there's, I mean, to be quite serious without buttering up.
He's also saying if he does turn up in Lewis, it'll be the first time.
Yes.
It'll be for the first time.
Yes, and he's seen our documentary that it outlines some of the finer points of Lewis.
Well, I mean, the bloody history of a small town, tall tales, the corner. These are all good. These are good archive programs, Keith.
Yeah, and we've got a lot more too. once again, because of the gypsy-like nature of Mirador to date, always moving studios, is a lot of these programs are in the archives, and we got hours and hours and hours worth of archives. So it needs somebody to sit down and go through the archives. I do the best I can, but on top of everything else, it gets a bit much. So what we need to do is to expand our number of people. And actually, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're watching at the North Pole. If you want to get involved in Mirador, you can. We are local, not parochial, and because we've got this wonderful piece of software, you don't have to be in Lewis to get involved.
So, no, I get that, but it was important when you had the base in the White Hart, and it's important now that you have a local base with Declan.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It's so much more interesting for the viewers, the listeners, than being in your front room.
Now you want to butter up? Have you seen the latest one from Gary?
Well, apparently our programs are better than BBC and ITV.
There you go.
That's a compliment right up your street, Keith. Actually, right. I've just had a message through from the engineer. He'll be here just after 10 o'clock.
Oh, right. Okay, so in about 20 minutes' time. Do you have to do anything in preparation?
Yes, I've done that already. I've cleared the decks.
Ah, right.
So he's got full access. Just give me a minute, Keith.
Yes. Well, is perhaps giving you a bit of background to Mirador isn't. Well, you may find it quite interesting, really, because we are one of a kind. There is no equivalent anywhere in the world of Mirador television, and so viewers, you are watching something quite unique. Some people will like it. Some people will think it's a bunch of old fumblebums, but it is fun, and certainly when John Henty goes out and about into the highways and byways more than any of us, and he gets very good reaction from viewers. So I think that bears up some of our own assessments.
Sorry, I've just got back in my seat. I had to pass on the message of the timings to Jackie. So I haven't picked up on your last pearls of wisdom.
Well, I was saying that even though we're chatting about Mirador and some of the problems and some of the strengths and how it's being regarded out in the great audience land, and it's very encouraging. But I said that I don't mind us chatting about Mirador a little bit because I think the viewers find it interesting because we are unique. There isn't another one in the country, and probably not in the world for that matter.
Well, what we are doing in our very speaking for myself, in our very amateurish volunteer fashion, is when you and I discuss the Mirador itself, effectively the viewer stroke listener is in a board meeting.
Yes.
Because we're discussing how to improve it and its ratings and etc., which is what we would do if we were executives, wouldn't we?
Yes, that's right.
So we're being very open, for what it's worth, with our audience as to what our intentions are and ambitions are.
And hope that they will come along with us and keep supporting us to let us see those ambitions.
Well, there's no point doing it without viewers.
Right.
To me, anyway, my personal opinion is if we aren't getting any audiences, I don't personally see the point. It seems a bit soul destroying. But mercifully, we do have audiences.
Yes, it doesn't mean that all these people are viewers, but those people who are aware of Mirador is from time to time I put up little personal things, but from Mirador on an app called Next Door.
Yes.
And I put one up the other day because I was having some difficulty with my Parkinson's, and people are interested in Parkinson's and what's being done about it. But the
Harry's on.
I'll bring Harry on while you're still able to be here. Good morning, Harry.
Good morning. This is a surprise. I thought we weren't on this week.
No, it's just Monday we weren't on. And it was my very inept way of trying to explain to everybody what we were doing. But Philip and I were just talking about the slightly shambolic nature of Mirador, and that is actually quite appealing to the viewer. And we have one lovely viewer on, Gary Toynton, who has been sending us messages, and his last message is, your programs are better than BBC and ITV.
Well, that's very good of him, damning us with faint praise, of course, but...
exactly right, Mr. Atherton. Exactly right.
It's encouraging because it's better if people speak well of you than ill.
Indeed.
So that's his remarks are very welcome and appreciated, and God bless him. whichever God he believes in, of course, So I'm sorry then, I didn't realize we were on Friday this week. So anyway, here I am, unprepared to speak on any matter whatsoever. So I shall speak volubly on things that I don't know anything about.
Well, that's the norm.
Yeah, that's the norm. Right.
Gary's posted a message saying, "Good morning, Harry."
Right. Yeah. Oh, well, that's good. So, what the subject you say again is that we're talking about is what?
Well, that's up to you and Keith, because Fridays.
I thought you were saying that the subject was about something to do with organization. No, just no, or.
I was just saying that in many ways, Mirador has to be really careful. Is in commercial terms would be called over trading. Because we are gaining audiences and we're expanding. And in the last week, I've found 3 more people who have sort of said, "Oh, I wouldn't mind doing some stuff on Mirador," which, when you expand at that rate, is our workforce going up by about 40%. Is you also need the infrastructure to look after it. So I'm running fast to stand still.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay. Well, that's a good sign that things are moving ahead, and that we're reaching a broad audience of 3 people or 5 people.
Oh, now don't exaggerate, Harry.
No, don't carry away here. So anyway, what's the news today? The news today is that oh gosh, we've got Tory MPs leaving the sinking ship like rats, drowning rats.
Correct.
Don't want to go down with the ship. An interesting article that I got a glimpse of was this question of when an MP crosses the floor and goes to sit with the opposition. I'm curious as to why they have a right to do that, because they were elected by constituents for particular reasons, and I assume that this Elphick woman was elected by her Conservative constituents, who now see themselves represented by Labour. That is an abuse of democracy, in my opinion. You should not be allowed to cross the floor. Now, that's a bold statement, which I can't defend particularly, but it seems illogical that if I lived in Dover and I was represented by my Conservative Member of Parliament to put forward my values, my views, my kinds of things that I would like to happen to my country or my town, and suddenly she's part of an apparatus which is going to do the exact opposite of what I believe in. I would not want that. I do not see that as being democratic. I don't know. How do you guys feel about that?
Well,
I agree. But I think that the electorate will because we're expecting an election in the next 2 or 3 months, is that the mechanism for calling a by-election and so on, and she would have to resign anyway, but is considered too onerous, so that she would stand for re-election with only a couple of weeks or so to go in the Parliament. So nobody can get excited about that. But this woman is she's one of those people who are, I believe, my reading is that she is a career politician, and there's no commitment there to anybody.
Oh, I see. Because she's described as being, for instance, to the right of the Conservative Party, which is a very strange place to be these days, since the Conservative Party is blatantly liberal, Lib Dem, or in fact, in many cases, quite socialist, the Conservative Party. That's why we've got to get rid of them. And so we'll get a proper Conservative Party in. That is for the people who believe in conservatism. And the people who don't will vote in their party, and that, as I say, is known as democracy. But it seems very curious that a lady who's ticketed as being on the right of the Conservative Party would be a natural fit for the left-wing party. I would imagine that there was quite some resistance amongst the more ideological, extreme left-wing components of the Labour Party to admit a person of that caliber into their ranks.
There was, but it wasn't just the ideologists. The vast majority of Labour MPs were disgusted with Starmer for allowing it. But you see, only this morning on our news comes the declaration by Starmer, who is in Dover, which is her constituency, and he's saying, when we get in, we're going to scrap this Rwanda nonsense. We're going to use the money to really pep up a border force to stop the small boats and migrants.
Yes.
That is what she and he have got in common. It's no accident, in my opinion, Harry, that that's his first announcement since her defection. And that may well be what saves her bacon as an MP in Dover, because I suspect that is exactly what the constituents there want. And she wants to deliver it, irrespective of her wider right-wing views.
Sure.
But she's not popular in the Labour Party.
No, I mean, I would think not, because of her, as I say, right-wing posture. But interesting point here. I did read somewhere that Starmer is proposing to use anti-terror laws
Yes.
to stop the immigrant flow, because logically, a border force. How do you stop the immigrants once they've gotten to your shores? I mean, you can't put them back in these frail rubber boats and send them back into the stormy waves.
But
What once you get there,
you, you you will know this because of your current domicile.
mm-hmm.
It's because of the EU. The French won't take them back.
Mm-hmm.
So the Brits cannot return them in whatever vessel they choose to use.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why there's been the row in the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland.
But that takes me back to the point that if you had a border force numbering hundreds of thousands, and the illegal immigrants are coming ashore, they've still got to absorb them. They've still got to take them in. They've got to take them and put them somewhere, and feed them and house them, and apparently give them pocket money and iPhones and all sorts of wonderful things. So increasing the border force, I can't possibly see how that changes anything. They've got to be stopped at source. We've got to.
Yes, I think that's my fault for using the phrase border force.
Mm-hmm.
You've reminded me it's going to be an anti-terror task force.
Yeah.
I don't think I got that wrong. I don't think it is the border agency.
Mm-hmm. Well, maritime limits vary according to the situation. Now, a maritime limit between England and France is a very blurred area because the channel is so narrow at certain points. So if you've got a 12-mile limit, you're already halfway across, at least on certain parts of the channel. But they need to be stopped while they're in French waters, I would have thought.
Yes.
If you're really going to seriously stop the flow of illegal immigrants or make their life such that there is no particular interest in coming across. The pictures we see of immigrants coming ashore, you see them dragging their boat to the shore, and if they haven't been royally treated and brought in by the Royal Navy from halfway to ease their trip, they make it to the stony pebbled beaches of wherever, and then they just disappear up the hill with interested bystanders watching or clapping or not paying or watering their dogs or something. I mean, it is absolutely, it's a joke. I mean, if a nation is seeking to commit public suicide at the moment, it's Britain, from what I can see. In virtually every aspect, they seem determined to destroy our industries with this stupid false argument that of global warming created by man. Global warming has always happened. It's up and down. And so what we're doing is we're destroying our industry to help countries like China build up theirs and flood us with cheap electric cars.
Just pause a minute, Harry. Keith, I've got to leave you because this chap's arrived early.
Okay. Thanks for joining us, Philip. In fact, Mark maybe will be along soon, so we can have a third. And Harry, if you've got the time, hopefully Melissa will be on in 20 minutes or so. We could have another nice jamboree similar to the one that we had last Friday.
Sure, why not? Why not?
Why not, indeed?
No, but
in fact, I think that jolly jamborees on a Friday are really a great way to end the week because they are so much fun.
I think so. And what's important is Melissa is obviously, it's a broader, it makes a broader church in many ways. We get a female point of view from another country, New York of all places, and So we're just not in a narrow stream of thought.
No, exactly. Which is what we boast, is that we are not parochial.
It broadens the base of our debate. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
because sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
No, you carry on with.
No, it's just that a couple of moments ago I was getting back on my high horse again about this total zero nonsense. I mean, what we should be doing is planting more trees. I mean, instead of taking out 6,000 trees a day in the Amazon basin, and just as many in the Indonesian rainforest, which would be absorbing CO2, and certainly the CO2 created by man. Obviously, man is creating CO2. Just as the cows are creating methane. Well, we're not going to get rid of cows. We're not going to get rid of man.
No.
But what we are is we're committing collective suicide as a nation by destroying our industries and not creating the energy necessary to keep them turning. And so we have to buy goods from abroad that are created by countries that don't give a toot about CO2 emissions, and creating many more emissions by actually not doing it ourselves. So we are increasing global emissions by destroying our industry and importing manufactured goods. And who do we import them from? China, the second richest nation on earth, to which we still send subsidies every year. Millions of pounds.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Can you imagine the idiocy of that?
Yes. Every time that we suggest that we cut back foreign aid or development, there's a big uproar. But I've worked in several countries where we send aid, and we send people to administer that aid, and we send all the losers. People who can't seem to settle and do work back in Blighty. And some of them are quite incredible. I worked in Armenia, and I think it was Armenia, so I have to be very careful about what I say. But our ambassador was known for walking around in bare feet.
Mm-hmm.
He was somebody who wanted to make a statement instead of getting on with looking after the country's interests. Is a bit busy, sort of saying rah rah rah. Look at all this modern thinking. Well, I don't think we need that. I think we really need a selection process that is, a good, solid one, so that if we're going to send some of this money, some of this aid, that it is properly administered and properly spent.
Well, precisely. I mean, because the money we send to these developing countries, how do we know that how well it's used? Is there any audit? Is there any accounting procedure that, or does it go straight into people's pockets, or does it go into projects that have no particular value, or that are just ideological projects? And it's a big chunk of money that goes off. In terms of percentages of the British budget, I think it's quite small, but with the figure itself has got so many noughts on it that make your head spin.
Yes.
And it's so all of this money going without any what do you call it in accounting terms, checks and balances as to how it's spent and how it's applied, why are we doing that? What benefit is what right have our politicians got to spend our taxpayers' money on something which does not benefit the British people?
Quite. But not only that, when I was in Kosovo, for instance, there's quite a large international development. There was USAID, there was the American Embassy, there were American forces. They all had problems with computers. Why? Because the money that is spent in Kosovo must be spent buying American goods. Well, the Americans don't make good computers. It's the Far East or various European countries that have developed the expertise, but they had to buy American computers, and they were always popping next door and
Well,
using the computers in the Philippines or something.
But one assumes that foreign aid is to unless it's based on noble intent, noble tradition, which is all very nice and all wonderful, being very generous with other people's money. Either that, or it's designed to acquire influence over foreign matters in the interest always of our nation, of our taxpayer.
Yes.
And that is just not the case. I mean,
No.
a large chunk of the aid to China, I understand, goes in grants to allow Chinese students by the tens of thousands to come and study at British universities and steal all of our intellectual and technical secrets and go back and develop them and then flog them back to us at 6 times the price. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. And if we combine this subject with the one of politics, where Starmer and Sunak are completely useless. I mean, the whole system is useless. That it's not representing the British people, the interests of the British people. It's representing ideological thought of one side or the other, which has got nothing to do what Mr. and Mrs. Jones or Mr. and Mrs. Smith are worried about on their daily routine, how to find the price of a loaf of bread and put some gas in the car and petrol, I suppose I should say, and get to work and find work to do that will allow them to pay their mortgages and raise their kids in some decent fashion. I mean, these are the things that interest the average person, not whether there's crop growing in Somalia. I mean, let's get the whole thing is ridiculous. Anyway, that's a personal point of view, and those of us who arrive at the end of our lives can look back and see how these policies have evolved and have they brought any benefit to the people who are paying the bill. And I can't see how they have. They've just made us a sucker. And the sooner we cut loose from all of that nonsense, the better. I'm so happy we cut loose from Europe, which is a corrupt and bent organization at the best of times. And again, totally driven by ideological principle. The people come second in Europe. It's a question of creating state power and passing laws of everything. We should have less laws. We should throw half the laws we've got in the ocean and just allow people to be free. We're becoming a nanny state, and helicopter government is such that individual freedoms have gone out of the window. Now, these are the views of an old man. But the reviews that have accumulated over 90 years, and I just feel that we're, as a nation, we're committing suicide.
Yes. What I find difficult to swallow, Harry, is that is Westminster in all its arm waving about the things that are wrong don't actually examine the sort of situations that you have just described and how we can improve them. I mean, in the main, my experience, particularly of the Americans, and I have a lot of admiration for a lot of things American, but is that the people that they send to fulfill these overseas jobs and so on and so forth, are people who can't get a job at home. Mm-hmm. And so therefore the assessment that they send back to the State Department or to the Foreign Office or the Overseas Development or whatever is that hang on, it is. Morning, Mark.
Oh, morning, Keith. I can't hear you though.
Can you not?
There must be something wrong with my sound. I'll just go off and come back on again.
Yes, okay, I can hear you. So we'll remove you and you come back on. Um, they therefore are sending back duff information.
Well, these are people who it's like a civil service job, isn't it? It's a government job in many ways. I was going to say there are two kinds of work. Um, there's the kind of work that generates wealth, and there's the kind of work that spends it, that provides services. Now, some of the work that provides services is essential, whether the doctors and other people who keep the roads open and that sort of thing is essential to modern society. But if the work that is being done is being applied for ideological reasons, I don't see where the payback is to the people who are paying the bills. I really don't. And I mean, we've got the explosion, and it is a word explosion of the civil service in Britain, the blob as it's called. I think over this Tory government, it's increased by between 50 and 100,000 people. What on earth do they all do? And how many days a week do they work? And to what extent do they develop in their own amorphous mess a philosophy which contradicts what their political leaders would wish them to do? I'm talking either side here, whether you're a socialist minister or whether you're a conservative minister, to try and get your department to enact the laws or principles or policies that you have decided collectively, democratically, to apply to a particular problem. There's actually resistance. There's actually sabotage. If you've got somebody that's trying to, a left-wing thinker, he'll try to block a right-wing policy, and vice versa. A right-wing thinker will try and block a left-wing policy. They're not serving their masters. They're trying to sabotage the system. I mean, the Germans have got, for a population quite a lot bigger than Britain, have got half as many civil servants as we've got.
I mean, I believe that,
or less than half, in fact. It's amazing. I mean, the Whitehall blob is a scandal.
Yeah.
And do what? Walk around with a furled umbrella and a bowler hat and cross Westminster Bridge? I don't know quite what these people do, but they certainly don't. And demand that they can work from home or they have all of these benefits, get gold-plated pensions. Some of the salaries they get are just astronomical, but they're not generating wealth. In fact, they're impeding the generation of wealth. And they certainly, I don't think, contribute to the smooth running of the country. Now, obviously, this is a broad statement, and there's some dedicated civil servants who work their backsides off to do what it is that they're supposed to do. But we've got to differentiate them. We've got to make a code. We've got to find out whose jobs are worthwhile. In industry, if somebody wasn't productive, they'd be out the door in 5 minutes. Yes. But in the civil service, if the job isn't getting done, we just hire 10 more.
I mean, what you say is very true, and whether in fact we're expressing a view from, as a matter of fact, views from older men or older women, for that matter, is actually more valid than some of the sort of the 30-year-olds with 10 degrees who have no experience of life. And yet here they are in the middle of telling other people how to live.
Well, actually, young people should have young, fertile minds and start to brimming with ideas, because we, the older generation, haven't got it all right anyway. We've screwed it up royally over the years, so we've got no peg on which to hang our hats. But one thing young people do lack is experience. And unless you've got experience, you can't evaluate and separate the wheat from the chaff, the good from the bad, and see what systems that work and systems that don't work. despite the fact, of course, that is largely cyclical. We condemn to repeat mistakes as cyclical. Each generation makes its own mistakes, and you go back to square one. But that's a philosophical point of view. But you can only learn from experience. You don't put your hand on a hot stove twice, you know.
No, you're absolutely right, and we see the downside for our own countries in the way that this system is set up. But also, Harry, I think that jobs worth as civil servants have their own language and their own way of looking at things. Now, I have a pretty fair track record, had a pretty fair track record in the past of overseas development. I mean, I've been shooting myself in the foot, but I've always said that I was one person rather experienced in what I was out there to do. But I once went to be interviewed for a job. I forget where it was. One of the Balkan countries. Anyway, but I vast experience in the Balkan countries, vast experience in the Balkan media, and the people who were interviewing me I did not understand what on earth they were talking about. They were using their language, not journalistic language. Let's try again. Can you hear us now, Mark?
I can now. Good morning, Harry. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. Wow. Good. It's a good show. Good show. Back onto full strength now.
Yeah, nice to see
you. And we've got
I'm a bit underdressed. I apologise. I'm a bit underdressed because for once, Harry, we've got a bit of heat over here.
Oh, well, here too, we're having great weather. We've got sunshine, but mind you, we promised it all be washed away at the weekend by heavy rainstorms. But I don't know. We'll take advantage of it while we can. We had 24 degrees yesterday, I think, in parts.
Wow.
in Normandy. So it was really good. I don't know what the temperature is in the UK, but your temperature on the south coast is pretty similar to ours, I think. Yeah.
No, I'm up near Manchester, so it's about 21 degrees.
Oh, sorry. Okay, right. Manchester.
I've just spent a washed out few days up in Whitby. I don't know if you've been to Whitby, Harry.
No, I'm going to stop you right there. There's a guy born in Whitby, and quite a number of years ago, well before the war, and you're looking at him.
Really? Oh, Harry! What a coincidence!
I was born in Whitby.
Really? Oh, it's the most beautiful place.
It's a great place. The problem is that I've been back a couple of times, and it smells of fish and chips all the time.
Yes.
But it's a wonderful place, and historically, you know, with Captain Cook, and Dracula, and the 99 steps up to the Abbey.
Up to the Abbey, yeah. I did that.
You went up to there, then St. Margaret's Church next to it, St. Margaret's Church, which actually predates the Abbey. The old church.
Does it really? I didn't know that.
It predates the Abbey. And a Synod of Whitby, when was that now? 617? I don't know, I'm getting my dates wrong now, but it's a lovely town. And Whitby Jet, which of course was popularized by Queen Victoria. And so all my dowager aunts who grew up under Victoria had a collection of Jet jewelry. I'm sure I've got some of it hidden away somewhere in my archives. But it is a lovely town. And of course, the surrounding countryside is where I grew up. And like the Yorkshire Moors, the Yorkshire Dales, the Moors and the Dales. And I grew up a little further down the coast in a town called Saltburn, which is
nice,
you may have visited. But it is a lovely place, and lovely beaches, and great part of the world, I think. Well, good for you. So Whitby.
The interesting thing is, Harry, I have to say, which is a terrible thing to say, it's the first time in 64 years that I've ever been to Whitby, and it was, you were right, it was absolutely beautiful. The beaches were just amazing. The only thing was I had an ice cream cone, and one of these bloody seagulls came down and actually took the whole ice cream cone off of me and flew
That's
up.
wonderful. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
So,
You can't trust these Yorkshire seagulls; they'll steal your wallet. You know?
yeah, they're amazing. You were right about fish and chips. We went to actually another bird, but the Magpie Fish and Chip shop, Magpie Cafe. And the fish and chips were to die for, and they get the fish fresh every single day.
Sure.
From the fishermen, and it was to die for. But 2 days the weather was nice. The other day it rained, but actually it didn't really matter because you say the abbey and the church, so many beautiful things to look at. I'll definitely be going back.
And either way, up and down the coast, if you go down the coast to Brunswick Bay or up the coast to Robin Hood's Bay, and I mean, they're just amazing little towns buried away in the cliffside, and they're just gems. They're really worth a visit. And then
the other thing that was interesting, Harry, that was I guess because I've been working quite a lot down in London where no one talks to you. Up there, everybody talked to you. So even sort of walking down the front, I was on my own for a little bit, and I was just walking, and this guy just stopped me and said, "Hello, how are you?" And we had a nice chat. Then we went to a pub and we had a drink, and he introduced me to 3 or 4 of his mates. And you'd never get that in London. You get it where I live, but you'd never get that in London.
That's
true. Yeah, it was delightful.
Yeah, that's true. I lived in London for a few years, and when I was in the cavalry, you're right. It's a different society. They say that it's interesting you should say that, because they say that it's difficult to get to know people well in Yorkshire. So are we talking about getting to know them well or superficially? No, I think, well, getting to know somebody at all is a step in.
I think it was sort of. It was pub chit chat, but it was still very nice. And he introduced me to three of his friends and such like. And you absolutely, you could go in. I often go to a pub, in any pub in London, and no one even looks at you. They won't even look you in the eye.
That's true.
People just pass you by, and you can sit there for 2 or 3 hours, and nobody will even if you've got 3 seats around you, they won't come and sit near you.
That's true. That's true. Yeah.
Even today, each evening I go home and I spend an hour or so in the Aidensfield Arms.
That sounds nice.
You don't know where that is, do you?
No.
Heartbeat.
Heartbeat. Heartbeat. Heartbeat. Yes, I remember that. Very good. Yeah.
And in fact, from time to time, they go to Whitby on a case. And I agree with you. It looks as if it's a charming little town.
Yeah, it is. It's most beautiful sandy beaches. And you can't tell, but actually the water was really clear. We got lots of problems with sewage and such like, but it was beautiful and clear. I didn't swim in it. I paddled my feet in it, but it was really beautiful. But I was really taken by it, Harry. I say, having never been, we went up to Scarborough. And that was also
Scarborough's nice too. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very nice part of the world. It was, and it was quite cheap. It was not silly. And often seaside towns are often quite expensive, but it wasn't. It was no different to where I live here, which was interesting.
Yeah. And since we've referred to pubs 2 or 3 times, what kind of beer did you drink up there? The famous beer up in the northeast, of course, is Newcastle Brown Ale.
Yeah. They did sell Newquay Brown. I went to a pub that had 15 different real ales.
Wow. Yeah.
And they were all local. They're all sort of from sort of North Yorkshire and West Yorkshire down to Bradford.
Sure.
So I had a sample, and it was really good because you could have sort of you could have a glass about this big and sample them before you decided which one that you wanted. And that was it was £3.10p a pint, which I think was pretty cheap compared to
Oh gosh,
other
but
parts of the country.
compared to the south, when I go to a place I go to quite regularly when I'm in Britain is Red Hill in Surrey, which is where my brother lived, and he had his little house there, which I inherited. So I have that little house there, and there the beer's about £5 or £6 a pint at least.
Yeah, it's absolutely right. I've told Keith this story lots of times. A month or two ago, I went down to London and the train was late as per normal. So I went upstairs to the bar in Euston Station and said to the guy, "Can I have a large glass of Merlot?" And he poured me this large glass of Merlot. There are no prices up. And he came and he didn't say how much it was. He just put the machine, so you put your card onto it. And I looked at the machine. I couldn't believe it. It was £19.
Oh, ridiculous!
I said to him, I don't want it. I said, I'm not having it. He said, I've poured it already. I said, I'm not paying £19 for a glass of wine. I literally walked across the concourse to Sainsbury's and bought a bottle of Yellowtail Merlot for £7.50.
Well, there you go. No, you did right. You did absolutely right. But I think in Yorkshire, when the CAMRA, CAMRA, the Campaign for Real Ale came in back in the 60s or 70s, I forget when that was. There were quite a few of these cottage breweries sprang up, and I think Yorkshire embraced a few of them. So you do get this variety of beer in the north. You get the famous ones, which of course were Tetley's, which were the Smith brothers, Sam Smith and John Smith, and a famous one for its strength, of course, was the Newcastle Brown Ale, which was brewed for the steel workers, the dock workers, and coal miners up in the Newcastle area. That's pretty good. That'll put hairs on your chest.
I did have a bottle of Newquay Brown. It was very. But yeah, and in fact, I went to next sort of just in the town. There's a microbrewery there, and I went to have a look in there, and it was fascinating. And they were producing beer, and in fact, there were more. I went into a couple of pubs over the sort of 4 or 5 days, and you actually didn't find many of the regular beers, those ones that you mentioned, and Abbott Ale and the such like. It was all from the microbrewery, so it was really nice to see that the local breweries were being supported rather than these big multinationals that sort of swamped the market.
Well, this is it, and of course, one of the problems with the British pub, well, the biggest problem is, sadly, the disappearance of the British pub. They're closing at the rate of, I don't know how many, 2 or 3 a week or something. I read one somewhere, but many of the breweries bought up the pubs and to impose product on them, so you don't get the variety that you would get in the old pub. So the fact that you were able to get this selection of different beers would indicate to me that that they're still independently owned pubs.
Yeah, they were. I asked the landlord of this pub in the central Whitby, and I said to him, "Do you own it or do you manage it?" And he said, "Oh no, I own it." He said, and about 85% of pubs in the North Yorkshire area were all privately owned, not owned by breweries, which I thought was really good.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I agree. I think that's very important. It keeps the old pub tradition alive.
Yeah,
and to a degree, apart from being outlets for their product, and even in those cases, many of the pubs, they're not making their money on beer so much as making it on gastro, on joining it up with sort of upmarket restaurants with with high prices too. The drinking driving laws have impacted upon it, have impacted that. So the privately owned pub could be getting a new lease on life, as the big
it's really nice to see.
realize that just simply because they've anchored the sales of their product to we've got a better distribution system, that the real money isn't in the beer at all.
Yeah,
it's in the food.
Yeah. And I think that was what I noticed with all.
So that dynamic, commercial dynamic, could bring us back to independently owned pubs, which is a good thing.
Which would be great. Yes, which would be great, and certainly the diversity there was fantastic. And yeah, you're right. You know, most of them nearly all of them actually were providing food as well, and the food was reasonably expensive.
Some pubs have tried to turn themselves into restaurants, but in chatting to our chief of staff, Deck, what he's tried to do is to keep this as a good pub, which serves food, not a restaurant that pretends to be a pub. And I think you're absolutely right. This pub is hugely successful. I was talking to him yesterday. First of all, the famous Toads, for which he is famous, being the world champion in-house. But this past week, he's been play stool ball, which is a form of cricket. They've got a cricket team out of this pub. They've got a football team out of this pub. They've got 3 or 4 more different things where, the actual locals form these teams. That he's maintained that, but that's coming back too. So inter-pub rivalry is on the increase again. And I hope that it is a trend, because this is a smashing pub.
Well, the community, it's almost a community centre, anchors the community spirit and with all of these activities. And pubs were, I mean, I know patient wives waiting for their husbands to come home think of the pubs as being, people where people go to drink a little too much. It's not. Pubs are meeting places in the true sense of the word. It's where people can communicate, can commune with each other, and I think, and family pubs. What a wonderful expression, family pubs.
Yeah.
I mean, our whole families get together. It's a meeting place, and particularly, and in a small village, if the pub closes, it's game over.
Yeah.
It's just the
other thing that was interesting in this pub in Whitby was it was a dog friendly pub. And they actually put bowls of water out for the dogs. They actually got dog food that people could buy. And on the bar they'd got a big sweet container that had got little chews and bones in it for the dogs, and they encouraged people to bring their dogs in, and it was really fantastic. It was great.
No, that's good. What was the name of that pub again that you were talking about?
Black Horse.
Oh, the Black Horse, was it? Black Horse. Yeah. Not far from
the Abbey.
Yeah, I've probably been there, but it's so long ago.
They're like Keith was saying. They also, I don't know about football team, but they had skittles. There were some guys playing cribbage, and playing all sorts of sort of games as well. And
were they essentially local people or tourists?
Yeah, all local. Yeah, all local people.
That also is a good sign. I mean, and in many ways, that's what the tourist wants to see, to join in and experience a little bit of the local colour.
Yeah.
You can get pubs which are full of tourists and have no heart, no spirit.
It was
but if
full
you put a lot of people in there, then you truly feel, you're experiencing a different society, one that's different from your own. And particularly if people, as you say, will talk to you and they're friendly towards you, that's good. And there's some countries or some places, you've mentioned London as one, where people do not talk to you in the pub. You tend to be a stranger, and you have to go in there 2 or 3 or 4 nights before even acknowledge your presence.
I know I always bat on about this to Keith, but where I live in Stoke here, got a big Weatherspoons, and that opens at 8 o'clock in the morning and it's open till 1 o'clock in the morning, and it's full all day. You can go into Weatherspoons. There's 100 people in it at any time that you go in.
Local people, are they local people though?
All local people, yeah.
Oh, well, that's good. Then that's healthy.
And lots of people go in. Older people go in. You can buy a cup of coffee for £1.50 and free refills, and people sit there for 3 or 4 hours over a coffee, or go in, and the beer's really cheap, so people will go in. I go down in the afternoon about 2 o'clock till 5, have a couple of beers, meet with a group of friends, have a bit of a laugh. It's really great, and it's a proper social meeting place. And if it wasn't there, I certainly a couple of guys that I know that are widowed say that without here, we don't know where we go, because there's no community centre. There's nothing else around here to go to.
Well, this is it. The healthy human dynamic is to meet and communicate, be amongst people. I mean, there are many people, lonely people in this world. Some of them lonely without knowing it. Some of them consciously lonely. And it's essential that these places exist. A small village where the pub closes and everybody's behind the curtain and closed doors, it's doesn't survive for long, and nor do the people who live there.
No, absolutely.
Take away. Yeah. That's my excuse for going to the pub every night.
Yeah, mine too. It's a good excuse. Keith, we can't hear you now, Keith. Keith, you're miming. We can't hear you.
No, I can't hear anything from Keith.
I can't hear Keith.
No, it looks like he's reaching down for his button or something.
Down for his mouse to get his volume up.
No, Keith, he can hear us, I guess, can he? Oh, there he is. Yeah, we couldn't hear you.
Yes.
The brothers on, Keith.
I just performed a huge community service because I act as doorman at the pub. And the beer delivery is due, so I had to leave you for a minute or two to let the beer man in.
Good for you, Keith.
A great social service. Now you've got to put that in Mirador's articles of faith.
Absolutely, yes. Well, now we're joined by beauty.
Ah, Melissa.
No. Greetings.
Hello.
Hello there.
How are you?
I'm trying to hold the camera correctly. I need to get a tripod. I think that's what I need. Yeah. I'll have to use my arm as the tripod today.
You're holding it by hand, are you? You got your camera by hand?
I do. I have to get a really good tripod, though. That just kind of. I had a tripod, and it was just it kept falling over. So I was like, oh, that's not going to work.
It looks like you're on board ship.
I'm on board ship.
Yeah, it's going a bit like that, rocking.
Yeah, that's my arm. Yeah, that's like. Yeah, I think if I put it on my sofa, you'll see my ceiling. So, hang on. All right, I'm just gonna kind of rest it there. Oh yeah, now you see my thumb. That's fantastic.
Your thumb, yeah, a nice thumb.
Thank you. Oh really?
It's really rocking around now.
Why is it doing that? Why am I seeing my thumb?
Yeah,
What the heck? Okay, all right, I'm good. I'm okay. Hang on a moment, guys. All right, there we go. Hopefully it doesn't fall over.
Well, it's perfect.
There you go. I'm just leaning it. I'm leaning it on something, so it's okay. I'll put it on top of the cat.
Yeah, they'll walk around them, won't it?
Yeah, right.
Now, I've got a question for Melissa. Did you have time to look up that song that I told you about by the French singer Julien Clerc?
Yeah, I generally speaking don't look at songs like that, Henry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I saw
Or
the
Harry.
notes
Oh,
about
I'm
it.
sorry.
You're a sort of a you're at the posh end of music, I believe, aren't you? You're
Yeah, I try to be. I in all seriousness, I always try to watch what I put into my mind.
Okay.
Keep it clean.
I do try to, because things can go awry if you don't. Right? Like his is a great example. Like with Keith and I have been in the news for many years, and it really does change you. It makes you cynical. It makes you negative about the world. And so it does impact you. And it was impacting me in a great way, greatly, and the fact that I saw my world is very negative. And so, since I'm the only thinker in my world, I needed to fix that if I wanted to have a good life. Right, Keith.
Yeah.
So I do. This is why when Keith asks me, "Oh, so what's happening?" I'm like, I don't know. I really, honestly, I think if like, could you imagine, like, I guess I guess your equivalent of the New York Post would be the Sun, right? How would your life be like if your mind were basically the Sun? You'd have a pretty awful life, it's awful, right? If you think about it.
You live in another universe.
Yeah, and it's not. It's a real crazy, weird, like.
That's interesting, though, because newspapers, they are having less and less influence. They're being read less and less, particularly by young people. I think social media is more the big influence.
And that's another thing. It's funny. I even have to curb myself with it, because it can be very addictive. So I take off all of those. I only do Facebook for a private military group that I'm in. And I'll do it and I'm pretty select with the friends I choose, because you have to be a little careful with that, because it's your friends' that are the problem on your news feed, So when I have a friend and maybe they're really out there, I will have to unfollow somebody like that. I'll keep friends with them so I can contact them and be kind, but I really watch. So if somebody's news feed is really off the chain, I'm like, no.
Let me ask you a technical question there, because this is one thing that, because of my age, I don't understand it, all these new systems. But Facebook, if you get a friend, a contact is called a friend, isn't it? And now
I use that term loosely, really.
That friend will also have friends. So if you befriend a friend, are you automatically exposed to that person's friends?
Facebook will suggest that you be friends with this person. So you have to be very careful who you choose or who you click friend request. Like, I had a friend request from a friend's friend. So that, in that respect, you have to be careful, and maybe your friend will repeat. And then you also have to be careful of your settings. If they're public settings, you're going to be you're going to be more open. Like, everybody can see everything you do. With me, I have everything on private. So it's my circle of friends, and I don't have a large circle of friends, maybe 20. Because I try to keep it to those people I actually speak to. Right.
One of those friends, if they had a separate circle, would you then be accessed into their circle or not? Automatically, because then you've lost control of your privacy a bit, then, haven't you? If you were,
I think if you put public, you've completely lost control, because everything you do is out in public and can be shared and everything else. So I wouldn't say that. I wouldn't exactly. I'm sorry, Mark.
No, I was just going to say the big issue at the moment, which is very topical here in the UK, which perhaps Keith's seen, is there's been a big explosion with young people and them exchanging explicit pictures of themselves to a friend or whatever, to a boyfriend or whatever, and then that getting out, and then them being, and there's a law coming into I don't know how it's going to work, But I think with young people, they're looking at putting some sort of lock on it. But there was a girl on the radio in Stoke-on-Trent here, and she had sent a picture of herself to her boyfriend, who she was besotted by. She broke up with the boyfriend, and then the boyfriend posted this naked picture of her. I'm talking about a 13-year-old girl, not a 13-year-old girl, and of course it got around to all her friends, and it got out everywhere, and it was so dangerous, and it ruins these kids. It sort of ruined her life, and she wanted to end her life. It was that bad.
And it's incredibly sad. I'm just wondering, how would that, like, if I were to think about the equivalent of like something that would happen in the 1950s. A girl could take a picture, I suppose, and send it to her boyfriend via letter.
Mm.
And the boyfriend can show everybody, can send it all over the place. But they can't get it into the public domain necessarily, unless they're a newspaper publisher.
Yeah.
So I think, where are the parents?
Mm.
Where are
That's
they?
Yeah.
What are they like? What, you can't use these devices as a babysitting service.
Mm.
I hate to say that, you just can't. And they give these kids, they're like 6 months old, they give them a smartphone. What are you doing, guys? Because you want to entertain them, but then they grow up, and this is what this is their way of communicating. It's tough, and it even impacts our generation. Like Facebook friends. They're not your friends. A friend is somebody who's there for you in your time of need, right? Somebody who's there to listen. Somebody on, you have 400 friends on Facebook. Stop, we're all delusional. Seriously, we don't have 400 friends. So, and our time is limited, so you have to really be very select with what you put in your mind and the friends that you have around you. You have to make sure they're good friends, right?
Well, some philosopher once said that if you can count your friends on one hand, you're a rich man.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I've really been thinking a lot about that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's true, because a good friend. So what's a good friend? What's a good friend?
Somebody who cares about you. Someone
who's going to go out of their way for you too.
Yeah.
If let's say you have a relative who dies, let's say a parent dies, you're going to be there with them. You're going to go to the funeral. You're going to go to the memorial. You're going to be there for them. You're going to check in on them. If somebody if a friend invites you to a special event, you're going to show up. You're not going to make an excuse, right? Because you're lazy. You can't be lazy with good friends. You have to really step up and be a good friend.
Well, baby, you've got to be. You've got to work at being a good friend. But
yeah, you do.
Interesting thing here. I see a link between what we were talking about before. I think before Melissa came on. Did you catch the tail end where we were talking about pubs and bars, I suppose, in different parts of the world being meeting places where people come together and share that in a community? Well, the English pub we were talking about, which was very much of a communal meeting place and still is. And when villages lose their pub, they lose a certain sense of
cohesiveness,
identity.
Yeah.
And we were talking about the dynamic being a mechanism that brought people together, and the nature of human beings, except for loners. You do get loners and hermits, but essentially we're tribal by nature. We like to group together. We like to join clubs. We like to join, a hockey club or a rugby club or a tennis club or some sort of
the Travelers Club, Keith.
Stamp collecting club or whatever. We are tribal by nature. So it's a means of coming together. Now, smart cookies like Zuckerberg and the rest of them, they didn't invent the technology. The Steve Jobs and the Bill Gates did that remarkable piece of work. But these people came along and developed the application of that technology, and they did it on a tribal basis. So the very nature of Facebook is similar to going to the pub. You see the link trying to create here. It's influencing the tribal nature of man, and
absolutely,
in the generic term.
And there's no physical presence anymore.
Yeah, that's true.
This phone is your connection to the world. It's like, it's almost like Matrix like. It's weird.
Yeah.
I don't really like it.
You left your whole phone at home or left it somewhere else.
Oh my God! Like it's like your life,
End of the world.
right?
End of the world.
It is.
I think I said this last time when I've been in performer list. I said I went to a restaurant, a nice Italian restaurant, very small Italian restaurant, a month or so ago, and there was this young couple, most probably in their early 20s, and I sat next to them. I was with my daughter, and we sat next to them at the next table, and they were on their mobile phones, and we were there for 2 hours. And they didn't speak to each other for 2 hours. They were just on this. And I kept saying to Zara, "Do you think they say I'm going to the toilet, or what you can have for coffee, or shall we go home for some sex?" But it's all on
the phone.
Yeah, and I thought the whole reason for going out for a meal was it was a social occasion, and it goes back. It's exactly Harry's point. Hi, Phil.
Yeah,
Sorry.
Hi, Phil.
Hi, Melissa. Hi, Mark.
You know what I think it is? It's because the phone is highly addictive. It truly is. It gives you that dopamine hit. If you're feeling maybe discontent with your life by yourself, you're feeling lonely, you're feeling anxious about something that just happened at work, or you feel unfulfilled, lack of purpose, you go on your phone to feel better.
Yeah. By extension, even the computer itself. I mean, how many hours a day do we spend on the computer?
Well, I spend it for work, so I spend it, and for school.
But before, what did we do? Did we read?
That's another thing. An actual book, to pick up a book and read. I mean, I really have to. It's like I have to transfer my life back into my life, and get off the phone and just. But I'm telling you, if you try it, I try to put your phone in the. What is it? The bonnet? You call it a bonnet? No, the hood. What do you call it? The trunk. We call it the trunk. Put it. Try to put the boot. Try to put your phone in the boot of your car for a few hours and see how you feel. See how you feel. You'll be like, oh my God, what do I do with myself? I will actually do that. Or I'll leave it at home if I'm going to church, or if I'm going food shopping. You do feel like there's something missing. But I think that we have to retrain ourselves out of this. Seriously. It's mad. It's absolute madness. And we don't even realize we're swept up in it. It truly is. I mean, there are some good things about it. Really. I met Keith through television, right? Right, Keith? You still there?
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, through television, and but then eventually I did come to UK to see you. Remember Chester Cheese when I broke Benjamin Franklin? I broke Benjamin Franklin's ashtray. Yeah, remember that?
I still got the photograph. I was drinking champagne.
That was great. That was great. But
I'm just going to follow up on Melissa's point there. And what's interesting is the pace of technological change is accelerating all the time. When you see how quickly we've moved since World War II, I mean, it seemed like the world was stagnant, and then it seems as we've advanced at an amazing rate since then. And we're talking about the technology now, what's currently in fashion, whether it's Facebook or whether computers or what have you. But I suspect very strongly that there's a new, artificial intelligence is maybe an example, a new technological change, which is around the corner. And maybe it's being done micro. I mean, with the mobile phone, I wonder if the mobile phone's days are numbered, because the mobile phone will eventually be an implant.
That's going to be
hold in your hand or put in the trunk of your car. It's going to be something. It's put into the side of your head or something. A microchip so small that you can't see it, but it can do everything. Remember that that an iPhone can do everything and more than the computer that put the man on the moon.
Right. That's very
That's
true.
correct.
Very true.
If that
Could
is
I follow up on Mark's anecdote?
exponentially, then you're going to have a little microchip just behind your right ear, depending on on your politics, I suppose. And that's going to be your iPhone.
People are going to have to be on board with having something physically inserted into their bodies.
That's right. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking of.
I don't know. I think it. I mean, it's possible that people would go along with it because we all can act like sheep at times, myself included, certainly, because we're not thinking. We're not really thinking. Sometimes I don't even realize what I'm thinking until I sit still for a moment and I start to observe myself, and I'm like, wow. Like, because I think one of the things I've been doing, because I'm a Catholic, and so is sort of to try to get back to the good parts of the church, and so I try to incorporate certain things in my life. What do they call that? I did an interesting deep dive into the 7 deadly sins and the history of it, and I realized that those 7 deadly sins make you feel really bad. Pride. What was it? Pride, sloth, gluttony, envy, greed. Yeah. It makes you feel bad.
But that's what Catholicism is all about. I live in Arundel. Arundel is the main centre of Catholicism in southern England. The Duke of Norfolk is the premier lay peer of the land, but he's Roman Catholic. All my neighbours are Roman Catholics. There's a parish church, but there's a huge Catholic cathedral at the top of the hill in Arundel.
Right.
That is the culture here, even now. And they all feel guilty.
Well, it's not even about feeling guilty. It's about, okay, so I'm envying somebody. It's not even about, or I've been gluttonous today. What happens when you're gluttonous? You end up feeling pretty.
Your body tells you off.
Your body tells you off. Exactly. So, but you have to observe yourself. So you take gluttonous, for example. Okay, I've been gluttonous. What's the opposite of it?
Starvation.
Yes.
No, I mean, well, gluttonous is excess.
It's
over the top. Starvation is excess.
Yeah.
So it's about, to me, if you look at the opposite of these things, those are supposed to, they elevate you. They elevate you. So if I'm taking care of myself, if I'm healthy, I'm going to feel good, right? As opposed to me eating 5 pints of ice cream, which it's not that I couldn't do that. It's just that it would make me feel good.
Well, you drink ice cream?
Melissa, I've got a question.
No, we have these pints, you know.
No, I know. Sorry.
Yeah. We generally here, we don't say, we don't go to the bar and say we want a pint. They would be like, a pint of what?
Well, I'll tell you who would be lost in the States, and that's Mark Maybe. He has to go up and say, I'll have a pint.
Absolutely. It says it's a pint or nothing. That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really about how do you want to feel? How do you want your life to be? Right. And so that's really what it is. I don't want to feel awful when I wake up. Right. I don't want to feel sick. I don't want to feel like I can't move or I can't bend down to get something. You know, so it's.
Well, none of us do.
You know, that's the thing. You know,
do you think you're exceptional in wanting not to be like that? Because
well, the question is, what are you going to do to be there? Eat ice cream? You know, drink yourself to death? No. Right?
I agree.
It's about my choice how am I going to act in my life? What am I going to think in my life?
Well, that's a very good appraisal, if I may say so, of what any church doctrine should be about.
Yes.
It shouldn't be about guilt and flagellating yourself.
Yeah. And
it should be to encourage the individual to avoid the negative.
Correct.
And forget Catholics, forget Protestants, forget Lutherans. Christianity, in its basic form, and I don't mean religion, but the basic principles, in my view, teach that.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
Encourage us to be good to and with ourselves and with other people.
Yes. Absolutely. It's
and
the foundation. It's the foundation. I mean, it really is. It really is.
Yeah, but I'm just thinking here, Philip. Melissa brought up a point there, which I think was very interesting. She began there with the 7 deadly sins.
Yes.
Our religious beliefs, or notably Western religions, Christianity in its different forms, and Catholicism in this particular case, are they based on a sense of guilt, of what you shouldn't do? And if you
that's right.
If you stray over those limits, then you have a sense of guilt, and it applies. And the fact that 7 deadly sins included, I think, something like gluttony. It took it beyond ideology or religion and took it into social and human behavior. It's all based on a motivation of feeling guilty about it. I think that was a very interesting point that Melissa raised.
It depends on your perspective. I can look at the 7 deadly sins and say it's not about guilt. It's about directing me to where I should be.
Yes, exactly.
So I don't feel guilty so much. I just know that if I'm gluttonous, I'm not going to feel good. And it's knowing yourself, observing yourself. Why am I drinking in excess? Is there something in me I'm trying to avoid? Is there something bad that I'm trying to avoid in myself? We're all adults here. So if you want a good life, there's certain things you should do. If you want to feel good, there's certain things you should do and not do. I don't want to envy someone. I don't want to have so much pride. Oh yeah, I'm better than everyone else. That does not make you feel good.
But you're a bright lady. You're a bright lady, Melissa, and you have the intellectual breadth to make that analysis. But most people don't, and it's not to put them down. Many people do not have that ability for self-analysis. They simply engage in these excesses, and unfortunately, they blame it on something else, on somebody else's fault.
Yeah. It's not that.
Why is this guy rich and I'm poor? So
right. Yeah. It's not that I can't do that too. I can fall into that too.
Yeah.
So I want to be prideful and say, "Oh, I'm so perfect because I'm not doing the 7 deadly sins." I do it all the time.
Yeah.
But I just have, but I have to observe myself. When I'm feeling bad, what's going on? What's going on, Melissa? Why are you feeling bad? What's happening?
Yeah.
Are you feeling, are your past wounds from your childhood coming out? What's going on with you? So it's self-observation, really.
Speaking personally, you're not on your own again in that sort of self-analysis. So you've been brought up in Roman Catholicism from day one, yeah? Or are you a convert?
Oh no, I'm day one. Day one, yeah.
So it literally is it's hardwired.
I've been able to step back and take a look at it and say to myself, I'm not, I don't want to walk around blind to everything because nothing is perfect. No church is perfect. They all have their problems. Why? Because we're humans and there are humans involved in the church. So, but I will want to take the good parts of it. And I think one of the things I'd gone back and I actually started doing traditional Latin Mass. And I think because I'm a musician, I find it so absolutely gorgeous.
Oh no, I mean,
you know, and so it's just a whole part of the experience.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
And if you happen to have a good priest who does a great homily and takes some of the scriptures and actually makes them more practical, it's really fantastic. It's almost like a motivation, right?
I completely agree with you. I had that very experience years ago. We had a new vicar, a new priest at our parish church, which is Anglican, but it's a very high church. In Arundel, you have to be ecumenical. And it's the Protestants who are catching up with the Catholics, because the Catholics are dominant. So a Catholic, you could come over and go to a service in my parish church, and apart from the lack of incense, you would think you were in your own church. It's that high, as we call it.
Right. High level.
And
I understand.
We had this vicar who wasn't a Rolling Stone, but he was called Keith Richards. And that's true. And I, as now retired, but as a barrister and advocate, he gave the best sermons I've ever listened to. And he didn't give a damn about things like the pulpit. He came down into the body of the church and he talked to you from there. And his sermons were brave. They were almost threatening at times. Because Arundel is a very wealthy area. Too wealthy, too
gluttonous.
Gluttonous. Too privileged, too everything, too comfortable.
Right. Yeah.
And this guy had come from a very underprivileged area. And God, he gave us both barrels, and I loved it.
Fire and brimstone.
Yeah.
Actually, Harry, in one sense it was, but he wasn't saying, if you don't do what I'm suggesting, you're going to go to hell. I mean, that's not the Anglican way. Dare I say it without meaning to offend Melissa, it can be in extremis, it can be the Catholic way, because they want you in that confessional as often as possible. So,
that's not my experience, Phil, in my country anyway.
Well, that's good to hear.
The church doesn't talk about, oh, well, if you're gluttonous, you're going to hell. They just don't talk like that. Good. They talk mostly about having faith, having love and kindness, and do good works. A lot of the other churches, like the Protestant church, they don't do a whole lot about good works. Not in my country, anyway.
Right.
Well, what are you doing with your actions? What are you, just in your head? You got to go out there.
Well, now you're sounding like my old vicar. You're sounding like my old vicar now. This is exactly the sort of message he was giving. And yet now we have some hyper-intellectual, ultra-biblical, literal Christian priest, vicar, and the congregation has dwindled.
Yeah. You got to be careful with that. Yeah.
Which is a sadness. I mean, Harry, you were saying in a previous program that in France, even in where you live, churchgoers are of a certain age, a certain tradition. Have I got that right?
People attending church on a regular basis tend to be older people.
Yeah.
Quite clearly, there's a link between their age and impending death. Making sure they're getting a ticket to heaven, I suppose, in many ways.
You've got to hedge your bets, Harry.
Sure, absolutely, yeah. Well, it's Pascal, the famous, what in French they say, the Paris de Pascal. Pascal was a philosopher, a pot maker actually, began life, but a philosopher in the 1550s, and he said Pascal's bet was you better believe in God, because if he exists, then you're a winner, and if he doesn't exist, you ain't lost nothing.
Yeah. But
Precisely.
the reason that we have older people in church, I always thought, is I gravitated towards church because I was able to afford the 7 deadly sins.
And sorry to interrupt, guys.
Keith,
I've just had some rather sad news. Well, not just that. A good old friend has died, he died at a good age, 81, so he had a good innings. They want me to write an obituary for him. So I've got to go off and do my Christian duty.
Good stuff.
And leave you for a moment. But are we back on Monday?
Yes.
So 11 o'clock on Monday. Well, no, 10 o'clock your time.
11 o'clock your time.
My time. 10 o'clock your time on Monday. So excuse me for ducking out, but I need to go and do this because the deadline for the newspaper. So God bless you all, and see you on Monday.
I'll see you, Harry.
Cheers.
Bye,
Harry.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, I was going to say that one of the things that I'll be honest with you, I'm not a big churchgoer, so but I certainly the church that's in the village that I live in, now the average age is 106. No, but it's certainly, and I wonder, it doesn't seem to be drawing in young people. And I used to do bell ringing, and when my mum passed away in November, I went back to the village that I used to do bell ringing, and met up with the guy actually who's been the master of the bell tower for 45 years. And he said, I think that this will be the last time that we'll be ringing the bells because we just can't get people that want to come along and do that. And I thought it's very sad. And in fact, in the area that I live in, there are 12 churches and only one church, which is Stoke Minster, rings the bells. The others, they don't have people that can do it. And I think it's a real sad thing that young people aren't being attracted into it. And maybe it goes along with Philip's point, maybe because it's sometimes a bit boring and not relevant to their lives. And maybe if you've got a charismatic priest, that makes all the difference in the world.
Absolutely. Well, you can have younger priests coming in, certainly. What you're seeing in this country is you're seeing people there's, especially with men, there's a loss of purpose. They really don't know what they're doing. They're flailing. Women, I don't know what we're doing. But so you're actually starting to see a new crop of young men coming into the church because they want direction. Mm-hmm. They want a purpose in their life. And so I think that's another thing about church. It's about, what's your purpose here? What are you doing here? What are you just hanging out in a pub? That's it? That's why you were here? So it's more of an explanation of, what am I doing here? Is there something good I'm doing? Or am I just hanging? And so you're seeing a lot of younger people actually in this country coming into the church. So, and I think, and I don't know, I'm not in UK, but I think the landscape is changing in your country quite a bit. Mm-hmm. I mean, that whole news about Oxford, they weren't going to do a celebration for St. George's Day, but they were going to do a celebration for the end of Ramadan. Mm-hmm. What's going on in your country?
Oh, Harry it's a shame Harry's gone because he would wax lyrical, but in a very negative way about the fact that the UK is increasingly secular with one exception, and that's Islam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I don't know what you're all doing. What are you all doing?
You're absolutely right, Melissa. On St. George's Day, I went down to our local Wetherspoons pub actually, and there were no St. George's. There were no flags up at all. And in fact, I went across to the card shop opposite, and I bought some flags, and we put them round us. I said to someone behind the bar, why haven't you got any flags up celebrating St. George's Day? And they said exactly that. It will offend people.
You all have to wake up,
Mm.
because you're going to
I
wake up
agree
to
with you,
you're going to
Melissa.
wake up to a world you don't
Yeah.
know.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I agree totally, Melissa. It's scary.
But I think also, it has to do with education, which we've downsized a little. If I may use just a little elitism, but sitting at the members' table in the Travellers Club, where you're surrounded by judges and physicians and even cabinet ministers and so on and so forth, often the talk is about bell ringing skills. Which choir do you belong to? And that sort of thing. It seems now it's gone back to being the preserve of a certain level of society. And it's the people who now spend a lot of time in front of the computer that aren't actually getting out and tasting some of these things.
Well, let's take campanology as the example. Mark was a campanologist. Again, we do have bells in our parish church.
Yes.
And there is a keeper of the tower,
Mm.
and there are bell ringers. But they're not young people.
No, that's exactly it.
So we go back to what I hope not rudely, tried to interject with earlier, because when I rejoined you, Mark, you were talking about the 2 hours in a restaurant with people on their mobile phones not exchanging a word.
Yeah.
I remember in Lewis, where Keith lives and is now, when I worked there in the courts, I would use a certain pub, not the Black Horse, sorry Declan, but the Brewer's Arms, because it was nearer the court. And I was in there one lunchtime, and 4 young East Asian men, I don't know, they could have been Chinese, they could have been Korean, I don't know. They came in, one of them spoke at the bar to order food. They then sat down, the 4 of them, went straight on their mobile phones, and after 30 minutes, not a word had been spoken. And I realised that they were texting each other. They were
It's so crazy. It's just insane. It's insanity.
And they were communicating entirely via their cell phone.
It's crazy.
So
it's insanity.
It's just it's bonkers.
It is bonkers. It's true.
Bonkers.
That's one of the things that
bonkers.
My son and I have a rule when we have dinner or we go out to dinner. There are no cell phones. We don't do cell phones. Like I literally, and a lot of times if I go out to dinner, I leave my cell phone at home. At home.
Well, I read the other day of a restaurant in London, an Italian restaurant in London, and they offer you a discount if you leave your cell phones, as you call them, at the door.
It's a good idea.
Abandon your cell phones.
Abandon your cell phones. Yeah, they're just so addictive, Phil. They're so addictive.
There's an issue as well linked with laptop computers, and that is that there are some people now that are sort of doing remote working and hybrid working, are going to coffee bars and working in coffee bars, which sounds a great idea. But there was a guy on the local TV saying that because he banned laptops on a Saturday and Sunday. He said because people come in, they buy a £2 cup of tea, and they sit there for 4 hours, taking up a table for 4 people.
Exactly.
And I can't
using their Wi-Fi.
And using their Wi-Fi.
That's right.
And he said there was furore. It was on the Midlands today.
It's the modern equivalent, or the contemporary equivalent, of going into a pub or a cafe and using their loo.
Yeah.
When you're not a customer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. But he was saying that since lockdown, he said there are a lot more people that are doing hybrid working. I don't know what's like in the States, Melissa, but it's a big thing here now. There's a big hoo-ha actually, because civil servants have all been told they've got to go back to work 5 days a week, and they're up in arms because they want to work from home.
I guess it depends on what you do. I work 3 days a week. I basically go in to socialize. I'll be very honest with you.
Yeah.
I really don't go in.
Totally agree.
I honestly do most of my work on the train before I even go into work. It's already done.
Yeah.
Because I'm sitting there like, and I'm done. And then I can socialize the rest of the time.
No.
So basically, you're paid this enormous salary just to socialize.
If they want me in socializing, yes.
Great stuff. That's the
So,
ticket.
and I get everything done I'm supposed to get done in a very high level, very efficient, very correct. Everything's great. I handle everything. But if you want me in the office, to get to know people and socialize, that's what I'm going to do. It's
well,
great.
Mark, Melissa, I think, may have heard of a dreadful soccer club here called Manchester United. Now, you may have, I know you've been on holiday, Mark, and I hope you had a lovely time. But the new 25% owner, a very successful but ruthless businessman called Sir Jim Ratcliffe, whose business nickname, because he is so ruthless, I suppose you have to be, is Sir Jim Rodent. He has now dictated that you don't work from home now if you administer Manchester United. He's basically said, you're going to come in 5 days a week, no working from home. The new working model is you're here. It encourages companionship. It encourages togetherness.
And resentfulness too, because people can resent.
Well,
that's why they call them rodents.
As ever. Good point, Madame Conti. Good point. However, that's what he said. And he said, if you don't like it, find alternative employment.
What car does he drive? Because we need to switch it with a horse. I'm not going to go back to horse and buggy, folks, because the executives don't even show up. Don't even go there with me. I'm there, and I actually go around and I said, who's here all the time? Who's not?
Well,
we have
guy's
certain
business
days.
Model. It may be prehistoric, and anyway, it is rumoured that about 40% of the staff are already considering handing in their notice.
Well, yeah.
There you go. That's instability. It's not a great way to run a business.
And the pandemic increased, did it not? Well, it didn't increase it. It was absolutely mandatory to work remotely from home.
Correct.
And we all got used to it.
Yes, and it's allowed us, it's advanced the technology to the point where you can do that. You can be flexible with your workforce. There are certain people in the workforce who have little kids at home, right? Precisely. Or they want to be there when their kid comes home from school.
Yeah.
Why not have the flexibility?
And the productivity.
Yes.
It's productivity as well in the hours that mum or the dad, whoever it is without the kids. Productiveness.
Right.
In comfort.
Yeah.
The irony is that there's 4 people on this screen at the moment. The only one who doesn't work from home is the man in the hat.
That's true. That's true.
He works in the pub. He's dead right.
The cat in the hat. By the way, don't accept this I go to church nonsense from Keith. He does go to church because he likes the communion wine.
Yes. And the free piece
they don't
of
give
bread.
you too much, though.
The free piece.
Oh, they do.
I just wanted to come in and just say that one area that it's not working as remotely, I don't know what's like in the States, Melissa, is in universities. I
think you're right about that.
After lockdown, students were used to being at home. There was a bit of a kickback, but at the time I was still doing some teaching, Phil's got the red wine now. Very good. It was.
You spotted that?
I spotted the red wine. I'm very impressed. Yeah.
I don't think Melissa will be because I drink far too much.
That's very good.
Well,
I
I mean,
like your style.
And it's interesting because my son is very good at wine, picking the whole thing. And I will have a little bit, but I don't like the way it makes me feel. It gives me heart palpitations. I get dehydrated, and I'm not able to go out and do what I want to do.
No.
Right?
You can't have that.
No.
So
you can't have that. Could I just bore you with a final story? Because I'm over here. I listen to Radio 3 on the BBC, which is classical music, but very informative. And I shared this with Keith yesterday. Beethoven went deaf at a very young age. Incredibly, he continued to compose. They've now researched by taking a strand of his hair, because the hair doesn't deteriorate. So they've subjected it to modern technology, genome, DNA, you name it. And in his hair, they have found that he had 90 times the amount of lead in his system that we would not want now. And they've determined that this was a major cause of his deafness.
Yeah.
His apparently, and Keith will relate to this, he had terrible flatulence. Terrible flatulence.
Keith, you fart a lot.
Only when people call me an old fart.
Hey, Mark, why do you think the pub's empty and open around you? There's nobody in there.
I keep seeing people run out behind him. Yeah, I keep seeing people run out that pub.
But you know, seriously, we are in an age that is not creative. Now, on one occasion when I was working with Melissa, I went out to cover the beer festival at Olympia or somewhere, and the first thing she said to me after I did the report is, "Are you pissed?" And of course I was, because in those days we had a club, and we had newsreaders like Reginald Bosanquet.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
And I can remember when I covered the Constitutional Conference in Vancouver, they had a newsreader who was like this, leading up to his report. And they counted him down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And he said, "Good evening, Canada. You have a new constitution."
Now that's called high-functioning alcoholism.
That's true.
Melissa, in America, you use the word pissed as well, do you?
No. But I know. I just know what it meant. But no, pissed is angry.
Pissed off.
Pissed off is angry.
Yeah. Right. Anyway, Beethoven, they decided he was so high in lead, A, because he ate fish caught in the Danube, which was highly polluted. But on the subject of wine, and this is the relation to what you were saying, Melissa. In his day, in Austria, they drank wine laced with lead.
Good grief.
Because lead made it sweeter. And they served it in lead goblets.
That's true.
I didn't know that. That's amazing.
Yeah.
I didn't know that, Phil. That's really interesting.
I just found that really interesting.
It is.
Oh, here, let's look at it from a good perspective. So as he became more and more deaf, right, his music changed.
Yes.
It became more bombastic, more louder, more instruments, right? Yeah. And it led us into the Romantic period of music. Isn't that great? Yeah, I love his later works. So
I mean, like your son, Melissa, you're a bit of a polymath. Anything I throw at you, you deal with.
Well, I think I find it. I like learning new things. So I'm not.
Remind us, when is Connor at Rhode Island?
On July 21st. I'll drive him up on the 20th.
Yeah.
I'll drive him up on the 20th. His last day at NHK is June 1st. And it's interesting because he says, I need like a month and a half to transition from being attached to journalism and that life to really focusing on what it's like going to be like to be in the military. Very regimented, very disciplined, very organized.
Yes.
Physically, very, very high level of physicality. So yeah, his wine days are gonna. Yeah, they're coming to an end. Coming to a close.
Yeah, but then he's going to go whoosh.
Yeah. I know. I have to say, Melissa. I know a couple of people in the military, and they are pissheads.
I think if you're flying an F-18, that's going to be tough.
Yes, I think so.
So
just very exciting.
Yeah. But anyway, gentlemen, I'm going to go because I have to go to work.
I better go too.
Yeah,
it's been lovely. It's been a lovely conversation. Thank you all.
The pub is about to open in half an hour.
And you have to air it out, right? Got to air it out.
We need to clear
Keith,
up, so
can you open a few windows?
Yeah.
Get out your cologne.
But I shall have in half an hour my first drink of the day.
Perfect. I'm going to go down to Weatherspoons now.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, Melissa.
Take care,
Take care, Melissa.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Well, another hilarious Friday, and I'm happy that we are finding a pattern here of having on a Monday serious conversations with these correspondents, and on a Friday having the sort of chat that we've had today, and thoroughly enjoying it. So I'm going to say toodle pip. We will be back on Monday morning in full flow, and just one last thing that we must do is because it's imminent, absolutely imminent. Sunday night, the pub quiz at the Black Horse, and it's £2 to enter. It is a very, very popular occasion, and you mustn't miss it. So that's the pub quiz at the Black Horse, 8:00 Sunday night here in Lewes. And prior to that, you can get a damn good roast Sunday lunch, also at the Black Horse. And Declan loves to greet you on a Sunday as host of the pub, and it's wonderful Sunday atmosphere. So do make sure that you avail yourself of either one or the other or both those occasions. Right you are. We will now say toodle pip, and see you Monday.